Call the meeting to order. This is the July 14, 2015 meeting of the Fairfield Town Planning and Zoning Commission. First item on the agenda are the meeting minutes from June 23, 2015.
I move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Jacobson and seconded by Commissioner Francis. Everybody have a copy of those? Any questions, changes? Nope, good. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are adopted unanimously. Next item is old business, 92 Post Road, special permit application of Taza Osteria and Bar pertaining to an enclosed patio and new vestibule in the design commercial district.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll just go over really quickly what's proposed. Actually, this was tabled at the last meeting. The applicant proposes to enclose a 300 square feet patio addition to their restaurant and to install a 37 square foot vestibule at the front. The proposed patio will be set back from the front of the existing building, so it's within the property line of the building. The applicant currently has a permit approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission for seasonal outdoor dining. They are proposing to enclose the patio to continue this outdoor dining throughout the entire year. As part of the application, the applicant is proposing to add 2 off-street parking spaces to accommodate the addition of the patio. Now, remember last time there was a ZBA approval for this application having to do with parking spaces. It was determined at the meeting that the calculation was incorrect. The applicant did reapply to ZBA. The ZBA had previously granted the variance for 3 parking spaces, if you remember, when the area in question would have required 6 additional spaces. The ZBA on July 2nd granted a revised variance application for a total of 6 spaces, 8 for the 300 square feet, less the 2 new spaces. So that, Mr. Chairman, brings you up to date on this particular application.
Thank you. We have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Barron's.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Jacobson. Thank you. Commissioner Barron's, you want to start?
Well, yeah, I mean, one big question that I had was answered. I mean, the ZBA does have the authority and discretion to approve parking variances. The last variance was insufficient, given that they're going to enclose this patio and create a, full, year-round dining, so it's not outdoor dining anymore. And that's within their power to do so. Whatever factors they weighed is out. So in effect, the parking requirements are met. No, I mean it's a good restaurant. It's a good application. I was a little concerned that it encroaches into the state right of way, I think, but that will require state approval, not necessarily ours. I don't see any other issues with the application, but I'd be willing to, hear any other commissioners that may have some concerns.
Thanks. Commissioner Jacobson.
I agree, the ZBA approved the variance. I agree, the ZBA approved the variance. I think it's a good application and I'll support it.
Commissioner Calabrese?
Yes. I think it's a good application. However, the parking does concern me, and I'm not 100% sure what spaces were counted or how they were counted. I mean, we had spaces that if you're parked in, you couldn't get out of. So I'm definitely concerned about the parking. However, if ZBA approved it, I'm good from a planning and zoning perspective.
And I think that's the answer, right? I mean, ZBA had the parking plan. They approved the parking plan and the reduction in number of spaces. As much as we might quibble or have quibbled with the double up parking stripes, that's now sort of been taken out of our hands. I mean, other than that, the application approved is consistent with our regulations. The significance here is that it's no longer quote-unquote outdoor dining space. I mean, we have to look at this as an application for an addition. It's additional dining space. They need more parking. They got ZBA to approve a variance of their parking plan. I think that's pretty much how I see it. Anyone else? We ready to vote? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The item passes unanimously. The next item is 652 Commerce Drive, special permit application of Bishop Design and Development for an addition to an existing building undergoing renovation in the Design Commercial and Commerce Drive district.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we completed a public hearing at our last meeting for this proposal. On August 17, 2013, this commission granted a special permit approval to convert an existing retail building at 652 Commerce Drive to a medical office for the use of orthopedic specialty group. The renovation and improvements to the buildings as approved by the commission basically are now under construction. In the course of finalizing construction plans and preparing the relocation, it was determined that the additional space for the clinical purpose was needed, or is needed. For this reason, the present application seeks to approval of additional 3,217 square feet of floor area. Approximately 1,000 square feet will be used for increasing the surgery center's capacity for outpatient surgery. New state regulations, they've indicated that new state regulations required the increased space, and the other 2,000 square feet will be allowed for a relocation of an MRI unit from 17 Kings Highway. The parking spaces required with regard to the new overall square footage of 46,493 square feet is 140 spaces, and the total number of 169 spaces are provided currently. All other aspects of the plans that were submitted at this hearing showing the proposed additions are consistent with the approval granted by the Commission in 2013. That, Mr. Chairman, pretty much outlines what was presented at the public hearing.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Calabrese.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a good application. Obviously, there's no impact on parking. The expansion that's being offered is one that'll actually get people out of their cars, not having to travel to go and have an MRI done. The surgical elements are required by state law, so I urge my colleagues to support this.
Thank you. Commissioner Calabrese?
Yeah, I support this application as well. I think it's a good application, meets our regulations. I don't see any reason to deny it.
Okay. Commissioner Francis?
I support the application. It's commendable that it's going to have a good amount of parking because their previous facility didn't have enough. It's a busy practice, so I'm very glad to support it.
Good. Thank you.
I support this application as well. I think it's a really good fit for the area. It's a nice use of an old building, and it'll be very attractive. So I do support this application.
Terrific. So I think we're ready to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Item carries unanimously. Next item is 201 Commerce Drive, special exception and permit, a special permit for excavation and fill and coastal site plan application of Penske Automotive for in addition to an existing building and the establishment of an automotive service facility in the Design Industrial District.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, again, we had completed a hearing on this application. Penske Automotive makes the application for special exception and a CAM application approval with regard to this plans for utilization of property located at 201 Commerce Drive. The subject property is located in the Design Industrial District and comprises 1.27 acres. It was previously occupied by the Master Electric. It is the intention, as the chairman mentioned, of Penske Auto to utilize the front portion of the building as an office space, accounting, human resources, administrative functions, and the rear portion of the building would be used to process and prepare pre-owned vehicles for sale. Once this process of maintenance, repair, and detailing was completed, the cars will be taken to one of the lots on Commerce Drive or Schofield Avenue facility pending sale. There will be no sales at this site. The hours of operation at the property will be approximately between 7:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. The new facility will accommodate between 55 and 65 employees. As shown on the site plan submitted, 66 parking spaces are provided. The plans indicate that, and as far as the CAM application, there was a report that was reviewed by staff and presented to the commission at the hearing. The plans indicated that the project will not have an adverse impact on coastal resources or coastal policies, and is consistent with the CAM Act. The project proposes to treat the site stormwater runoff, which would improve the water quality, significantly enhance. There's a landscaping that's being done that would improve the quality of the site's stormwater runoff and compliance with the flood regulations. Again, for all these reasons, it was felt that the CAM application, the proposal is consistent with the CAM policies. Now, as far as there was some issues and questions about circulation on the property, what the commission has received is, I'll go through it, is a letter indicating that there are going to be cross easements and some proposal for amending circulation and parking spaces. I'll just go through that really quick with you. The owners of property at 165 Commerce Drive, adjacent to this property, state in their letter that they are aware of the special exception site plan approval application of the Penske Auto Group. They have no objection to granting this application and the approval of the site plan as proposed. They further confirm that they will execute a reciprocal easement with the owner of 2001 Commerce Drive, wherein they'll grant the right to utilize a portion of their property for site circulation, egress and ingress, as referred in the site plan and associated with the activities proposed by the Penske Auto Group. The reciprocal easement will grant them the same rights and privileges, allowing utilization of the portion of the property located at 201 Commerce Drive as shown on the site plan to utilize for the same purposes. So essentially, the adjacent property are given each other cross easements so they can utilize, if you remember, that access way that basically was owned by both. The easement area is designated as proposed access and grading easement on the respective properties. Again, as I just mentioned, 165 and 201 Commerce Drive. Now, there was also some discussion about the actual circulation and some the orientation of some parking spaces in the front of the adjacent property. In the letter, they said, in addition, they state if the commission deems it necessary, with respect to the approval of the Penske Auto Group, they agree to restriping the spaces that are located northerly portion of their property in order to ensure most convenient access to the spaces. Remember what they were proposing is the circulation. The existing spaces were angled incorrectly to access them. Again, they agreed to, on their property, to revise that, and there is a revised plan that was submitted. I think you have copies of it.
We don't.
Sorry. The revised copy shows how they will reorientate the parking so that the circulation works properly. Now, Mr. Chairman, pretty much outlines what was presented at the hearing.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly. Second by Commissioner Francis.
The two issues that were of concern have been addressed by Mr. Devanchik. Those issues are the easement and circulation. It appears that from what we've been handed, the issues related to the striping being in what we would describe now as the correct direction is being provided. The kind of spine between the two properties now is provided with this reciprocal agreement so that the circulation, works. So overall, I don't have a problem with this. Obviously, there were members of the commission who raised these issues during the public hearing, and I'm certainly, I don't know if it requires this is now part of the application, whether it requires us to accept it as an amendment.
A condition of approval.
Oh, as a condition of approval, excuse me. I would certainly accept it as a condition of approval, what was been submitted to this, but otherwise I support.
Okay, so you want to amend your motion to approve with the condition that the letter be accepted, that they file the reciprocal easements as stated, and also restripe in accordance with the revised plan?
Yes, I do.
And Commissioner Francis, you adopt that? Okay, thank you. Do you have anything to say?
I appreciate their revising the striping and the circulation to comply with our regulations, and I will support this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, this was certainly an issue, and I'm glad to see that the applicant submitted the plans and resolved it. You know, the parking is sufficient so that they can restripe it the way that it should flow. And otherwise, the application complies with our regulations. All right? We ready to vote? All right, so the motion on the table is to approve with the condition as stated. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is 665, 711 Commerce Drive, special permit and request for transit-oriented development park designation application of Scala Partners LLC and Abbey Road Ventures LLC for a mixed-use commercial and residential building in the Design Commercial and Commerce Drive district.
I can go over the application, give you a brief overview of what was presented. Anyway,
Yeah. I mean, do you want me to poll the commission?
yeah, why don't you do it, because there are three.
So, in light of the attendance, we have, 5 regular members. It's been suggested that perhaps we table this application until the next meeting when we have more full composite of commissioners. We can certainly go forward and see where it takes us, or we can table it right now. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I won't object to tabling it, but I'm ready to vote. I mean, if somebody wants to table it for more time, that's
No?
okay.
Okay. Everybody ready?
I'm fine voting.
Ready to go?
I think we can open up for discussion if we have questions. We're under no time crunch. I think this doesn't expire until August 27th. There's 6 of us here. We could at least start discussing it, and we'll see what we think. We might have some questions.
Very good.
Think about it anyway.
I'll give you a brief overview of what was presented to the commission, some of the issues that were brought up. Okay, as per our section 13.14.5, this is an application to determine that a parcel qualifies for our transit-oriented development park. A written application for determination that the parcel qualifies as a transit-oriented development park was submitted to the commission, and it was accompanied by a written statement with plans and reports describing the proposed land use mix. Again, this is all required by our regulations. An affordability plan was provided. Information on the construction and management of the below market rate housing units as described in section 13.14.7 was submitted. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing, and basically that met the overall requirement for us to consider determination of this designation. The existing site is comprised of 2 adjacent parcels, 665 and 711 Commerce Drive, with a combined area of approximately 2.51 total acres. The site currently consists of 2 unoccupied building structures with paved parking area covering the remaining of the majority of the site. The 2 buildings currently located on the site with an approximate footprint of 28,380 square feet. They will be demolished. One of the issues, let me get to this. Section 12.4.18 states that in mixed-use developments within the transit-oriented development park, the residential building area cannot exceed more than 70% of the floor area. The total floor area for this building is 39,669 square feet approximately. What would be required, and it was represented that in fact the 70-30 mix between residential and commercial is being met. Of course, what we do with these applications is required that the applicant final survey plans for the certificate of occupancy would confirm this, along with, as well as all other design requirements, setback, coverage, bulk, and height. The only reason why I mentioned that is that if you remember, there was a prior application where the applicant was interested in maybe adjusting the percentage to 80/20. That was denied by this commission, so what is being represented to you is the 30/70 split. All right.
I move to approve.
I don't think Mr. Devanshi has,
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's a couple of other things I wanted to...
Oh,
Can
okay.
you speak to the affordable units?
Yeah, I'll get to that. I want to do this, the line of sight and affordability issues were two things that were brought up at the hearing that the commission had some questions about. The development is proposed on a parcel of land located at the southwest corner of the intersection of Commerce Drive and Black Rock Turnpike. Of the three existing access drives, the proposed development will only continue to use the existing center access drive located opposite 682 Commerce Drive. The existing easterly and westerly access drives will be eliminated. The site access intersection site distance analysis was done. Our engineering department reviewed the original report. The study concluded that the adequate ICD is available at the location at the proposed access drive. What our engineering department was requesting, that to support that finding, the applicant should supply proper documentation such as a plan of the site showing the sight line and associated profile. A plan and profile should be provided to the town to review, substantiate the findings. This was done, and I think you have a copy of, we did receive I have it. Yep. We received an email from our engineering department. We had an opportunity to review this revision, and I'll just read it really quickly. Laura Pooley, our town engineer, I have reviewed the plan attached, and that addresses the available sight lines for the proposed driveway for this development. The plan indicates that adequate sight lines exist for the proposed driveway in the location as shown on drawing C1 attached. I think they have copies of that.
I didn't print copies, but it was sent electronically.
All right, good.
I receed the email.
Good,
Has
all right.
everybody else received the email?
The location of the driveway is therefore acceptable, and adequate lines of sight will exist for the proposed driveway. That's the engineering report and review of the site plans that you received. The second issue that was discussed at the hearing had to do with the affordability plan. We had a report from Mark Barnhart, who is our Housing and Development Director. His report basically stated compliance plan is in substantial conformance with the applicable state and local regulations, with one exception. The calculation of the number of deed-restricted affordable below-market units. The town zoning regulations, section 13.14.7, provide that not less than 10% of the units shall be below market rate. The applicant proposed a set-aside of 10 units, which represents 9.9% of the proposed 1.1 unit development. Therefore, in order to achieve technical compliance, the applicant should set aside 11 units or reduce the number of units to 100 units. So I think the commission, in this instance, there's no particular condition of approval on the line of sight, just the fact that we received the additional information requested at the hearing meets our regulations. However, I would recommend a condition of approval if you agree with the town Housing and Development Director. In fact, that 11 affordable units are required as opposed to 10 as that's proposed. I would strongly recommend that you have a condition of approval that indicates that.
Was there also some comment by the applicant with regard to the landscaping plan and the trees?
Yes. Under our section, on our section 28, the shade tree requirements, they indicated that they felt they had the number of shade trees required by our count, which they do. However, the orientation didn't seem to meet the intent of the regulations, so I think, yes, the commission was requesting, and at the hearing, the applicant did say that they would be able to readjust and would submit a revised landscaping plan showing essentially some shade trees to be put in. If you look at the building, I guess it would be to the parking lot to the west is where the open area is. There were areas within that area of paved parking that would be appropriate for shade trees to be located within that. So yes, that was mentioned at the hearing. They accepted that, and I think a condition of approval would also be appropriate by the commission indicating that.
Now, they also asked, I believe they asked for a waiver, right, of the sidewalk requirement?
Yeah, they went
Do we
through
have to make
the
a specific
discussion.
finding or a specific acknowledgement with regard to that, one way or the other?
Yeah, I mean, what you heard at the hearing was, in fact, it was probably geographically very difficult to create there is a sidewalk on the other side of the road that goes the entire distance over the bridge. However, on the side, on the other, this side of, their side of the road, the grades were such that at one point, which essentially is the parking lot for the Bigelow Tea Company, it would just stop. And then at that point, people would have to cross the road to get to the other side, to get across the bridge. Two problems with that. Well, one problem with that is the line of sight. Coming over the bridge, you would not probably be able to see people at certain times crossing the road there. And the other thing is, part of their plan, they did show that they are improving the intersex action cross that's existing now, to kind of direct people to that area to cross onto the sidewalk. So yeah, a condition what was requested to waive the requirements for the parking, the sidewalks on that side. Although the front portion of the property that's fronting Commerce Drive will have the entire length of that will have a sidewalk.
But we do need to make a specific
Yes.
finding with regard to the sidewalk
A
on that
long-winded
part of
answer
the
to your
street.
question, yes.
All right.
We need a finding.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now?
Sorry.
I move to approve with the conditions of the scenery and the scenery plan and the sidewalk. I think 10 apartments is a reasonable compromise. I move to approve.
You mean 11?
Motion to
No,
approve with
10.
those conditions.
Yes.
Anyone second that motion? Second by Commissioner Canali. Do you have any comments?
I think this is a really good application. I think it's exactly the kind of building that we're looking for. I commend the developer for working hard to follow all our regulations, and I think it'll be a nice addition to the neighborhood.
Commissioner Canali?
It was a good application, and it is perhaps the first evidence of, or the first effort in trying to actually bring to reality the vision for this area that was, all the work for the Commerce Drive study. Broadly, as a matter of planning, not directly involved with this application, I'm concerned about, the kind of the lack of, what I would describe as comfortable pedestrian infrastructure. But on the other hand, I suppose ultimately, as I've reflected on this, that it sort of becomes a little bit like, if you build it, it will come, hopefully. And in other words, as we have these developments where there is going to be commercial on the ground floor, there are going to be residents living here, hopefully we can do more in terms of, there will be more in terms of making this, whether it's traffic calming, et cetera, just to do things that improve the walk shed in the larger development area. It seems like it was a very well presented application. This is one of the very rare instances where I actually, after discussing this in the public hearing with the applicant and having gone over and viewed the site, I actually do agree that, at least as the railroad bridge is constructed, I'm not certain that in this case requiring the sidewalk on that side would be a safe or wise decision. So this is one of the rare situations where I actually might, because it literally would actually be a hindrance to safety. In this case, I might not actually think I actually believe that we probably should maybe have a waiver here on the sidewalks. So overall, good application, a step in toward what the vision, at least this commission, has had for that area, and I support it.
How do you feel about the number of affordable units in compliance with our plan that we worked so hard to develop?
Well, absolutely. I should have said something about that. My take on this is two things. First, if this were 107 or 108 or something like that, and they were proposing 10, if this was closer to 9.1% versus 9.9, I might be more inclined to go to 11. In this case, I'm comfortable I support Commissioner Jacobson's view that 10 is a reasonable number. The reason being that, of all the places to ask a developer to further our vision, this is a tough one because they're breaking new ground in terms of development economically. They're asking folks to come into this area, to go to an area that isn't perceived necessarily as residential, and to take a chance on a new neighborhood, hopefully developing there. So, from my perspective at least, I'm comfortable with the idea of going with 10 on 101. But if there's a strong advocacy here to do that, my only concern would be, let's be careful what we're doing, because we finally got a developer that is willing to come here and to try to do something like this, and, for want of a nail, why unravel things, I guess. So I'd be comfortable with Commissioner Jacobs' view that 10 is okay.
Anyone else? Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, I have a few comments. First of all, in terms of, very felt positive towards this application. One is bringing rental units to our town. This is badly needed in our town, just rentals, whether affordable or not affordable. People need, I think there's a need out there for rentals. It's mixed use, and it meets the regulations that we produced after a very long process. I mean, this process took, it started in 2008 and was passed in 2011. A lot of process, a lot of stakeholder meetings, a charrette, public input, and this is the first real application we have had. I know, not everybody was on the commission at that time, and, just because, previous commission supported it doesn't mean we all have to support that vision. I was, and, I see a lot of positives. It is a little, it is the first one in a few years. When you see numbers like this, 140,000 square feet, 101 residential units, I don't know if we realize that this is the kind of development we're going to get. I remember sitting in that charrette thinking, okay, well, what's the big picture like about how many units do we think we'll generate, even how many affordable units? We're talking about the 10%. I remember thinking we may get 900, I don't know if this is still fact, just talking around a table that there could be 900 new residential units in that area, which would add, 90 or 100 affordable units. So it's a positive contribution. Again, I've got to judge this application by the regulations that we've prepared or, passed, approved, and this application meets it. I did have a concern about the 70/30, and I would require, want to make sure we have a condition to require that the final survey plans confirm that, because, and I understand when the other application came by for us to change the regs, if you just think about it just like simplistically, overly simplistically, without looking at a plan, if we allow a 5-story building, and we say the first floor has to be commercial, okay, exactly how are we going to get 70/30 and have a 5-story building? I believe they've done through some creativity in counting the covered parking as commercial. It's not exactly a store, it's covered parking.
And the 62 spaces there.
In the 62 spaces.
The number required for commercial.
Right.
Number required, but they're counting that space as commercial towards the requirement,
That's correct.
just to be clear.
Yeah.
That's bulk. It counts as bulk also in our requirements.
So it's not really part of the, it's covered, it's not really part of the building where people live in or work in. But, that's okay, I just want to.
I just have one comment on that, if I can. You're correct in that analysis, firstly. Secondly, that's not an unprecedented approach.
No.
The commission has approved 2 projects with similar calculations, one that was never built on the former Miller Volkswagen site, and one that was built, the Southport Village Partners Project, where the Delamar Hotel is. Their commercial calculation includes the structured parking that's within that building. So there's one example of where a similar approach has been taken. So it's not, while yes, your analysis is correct, it's not an unprecedented phenomenon.
Right, and I remember the one in the Volkswagen, I'm sorry that one wasn't built, I remember that was a nice structure as well. So I'm okay with that, I'd say we should have a condition of approval to require the final survey plans. As far as the sightlines go, we've got that confirmed, I'm okay with that, that meets our regulations. As far as the affordable units, I could side with Mr. Kennelly and Commissioner Jacobson on that too. The letter of our regulations, we usually approach these things where you're not just rounding up or rounding down. Like if it's a parking space, and it comes out that you need 4.3, you need 5, you don't need 4. It's not round up or round down. If you're talking about, if it was an 830G application and they have that 15, 30%, there's no rounding down. Here, you know, for one, I could see going that way, but that's not really the way the regulations are written, is not less than 10%. This is slightly less than 10%. Again, as Mr. Kennelly said, this is the first application in 3 years I want to be inviting, so I mean, I could see approving it with the 10 units, but I just wanted to be clear that normally we would not do that. The way we usually treat math here, it's not round up or round down. So.
Just one point about the 70/30 really quick.
Sure.
Because
Yeah,
you mentioned
no,
it.
go ahead.
One thing I think is important regarding the 70/30 is ultimately when we look at these projects, we have to think about, is this meeting what we wanted when we thought about this? Which is, we want to have a lively streetscape beneath. What you don't want are buildings that are nothing but garage underneath. They invite crime, they don't make people feel comfortable walking. The applicant has here created an attractive streetscape, and any review of what we have there would show that. So I think that's a good example of where we want to be careful. We do want to require down to the number, but do they meet the intent? And they absolutely do, stylistically and in terms of function, meet the intent of the 70/30, which is what we want. I'm just going to...
That's a good point. No, thank you, Mr. And the last point I'll make, then I'll stop talking, is that I agree also. I mean, I'm like a primary advocate of sidewalks everywhere, never waive sidewalks, except in the case where the presence of a sidewalk would create a greater safety hazard than the lack of it. I think that would be this. If you have a sidewalk, and normally I'm saying, okay, well, even if it can't be finished, okay, well, it's still better than nothing. Here it's not, because if somebody uses it, it could cause them to walk in a very busy street, you know, with sight lines that could be problematic, and it could be very dangerous. I don't think we should encourage that. So I actually would be in favor. I can't believe I'm saying that, waiving the sidewalk requirement. I think it's the first one I ever.
It's on the record now.
It's on the record.
Commissioner Calabrese.
Thank you. Obviously, I support this 100%. I think this is exactly what the commission wanted in this area. It's exactly what we need as a town in this area, and I agree with pretty much all the commissioners at this point as far as the residential goes and the 10%. I think 9.9% is close enough. It's not worth going back to the drawing board and, you know, turning this back. So I definitely support that. As far as the sidewalk goes, I agree 100%. From being out at that site, there's no possible way you can put a sidewalk in on the Bigelow side of that street there and not create a hazard. And we don't want to put our pedestrians in danger, obviously. So I support not putting that sidewalk in there. The building itself is gorgeous. I think it's going to attract a lot of people down there, and hopefully it'll bring in some other builders that want to develop down there as well. So, thank you.
Mr. Francis.
I too am very pleased that we're doing a transit-oriented development. It's an excellent addition to the area. I think it's a very attractive development. I really think the architects went out of their way to make it, both the colors and the setbacks, very, very attractive. Now, did you say did the landscape plan, or they're going to do one?
No,
With
the
the
landscaping plan was submitted. What they're going to be doing
Yeah.
is submitting a revised one to address your issue with the shade tree
Okay, but they didn't do that for tonight?
No, that'll come back for,
That would be one of the conditions of
Right.
approval would be the submission of a revised landscaping plan, which we would have to approve separately.
So would that be a reason to table it?
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
it
Oh,
would
we
not, I
approve
don't
it
think that
later.
would be a reason to table it,
We
but
just approve it later?
we have done that in the past, and it's a condition of approval. These are just rearranging, you know, shade trees in the parking
Yeah.
lot and the like, so. All right, good. Well, I won't belabor the points that are not what I perceive to be in contention. We worked really hard over many years to establish the framework for this kind of development, and I'm really, really excited that, you know, it's happening. I support conditions of approval for the revised landscaping plan. I've been by this site more times than I can remember. The sidewalk near the parking lot, near the bridge, is not appropriate. The applicant's arguments there are well taken. I would support the waiver. I have a real problem with not requiring specific compliance with our regulations for the affordable housing. Honestly, I'm disappointed with all of you. I cannot believe that where our regulations say not less than 10%, that we're not going to require that in this instance for one more unit. We have struggled with affordable housing in more ways than I can count. And the applicant itself, during the public hearing, acknowledged this and said, we'll either make one more or we'll reduce it by one to make sure we comply. I cannot urge you all enough to reconsider your positions on this point. I really feel strongly about this. I spend so much time dealing with these issues on behalf of this town. We all do, and we have come a long way. But to sit here and say, it's good enough, as you, Commissioner Barrett, just said, we don't do math that way in other circumstances, and it's not appropriate here, okay? So I really would urge you to amend your motion, really. Commissioner Jacobson, you go first.
I wasn't saying it from the point of view, it's like, oh, that's not good enough. I was saying it from the point of view, it is the first building and the first developer that's made an effort to come before us. I will amend my motion and make it 11 if that's a condition. I want it to go ahead. I want the building to go ahead, and I don't want it to be held up because of this. So, yes, I will amend it to be 11, but I certainly wasn't saying it because I'm disregarding the importance of the regulations. It's fine. I can make it 11, no
Okay.
problem.
Motion so amended. Commissioner Kennelly, you agree with that? Did you were the second, right?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah? You agree with that?
No, I mean, ultimately, as was mentioned, I'm sorry, it's not on?
Sorry. I don't want to hold it up either. And certainly I don't want to appear to be like, disregarding our regulations. It is a tenth of a point. That's no doubt about that. My only concern was just simply that I assume that there are some, built-in financial calculations that are worked out on this kind of stuff. It's small, but, what anything we could do to incentivize this individual to be successful didn't seem like a bad idea to me, but in the name of comedy and all, I'm fine with accepting the move to 11 out of 101.
Very good. So the motion so amended. Commissioner Francis?
It's 10%, not less than
Oh, but yeah.
10%, because he may reduce it to 100 units.
10%.
And secondly, we could bear in mind that Westport's criteria is 20%.
Well, our regulations state not less than 10%.
Right.
And the applicant itself acknowledged during the hearing that they would either, to comply,
That's right.
reduce the number of units overall, or provide for 11 so that they met our regulations. This is really significant, folks.
Well, that's their prerogative. If they choose to lower it to 100,
That's fine. And
Yeah.
our condition of approval could be
Right.
exactly that, okay? Now, so you, in response to my comments, you amended your motion to
Yes, I
require
did.
11.
Mhm.
Do you want to amend the motion to make it in the alternative, that they either reduce to 100 or provide for 11? Because we could give them the option in the
that's
condition.
fine. I'll give them the option.
Is that what,
Fine.
is that,
Yeah.
I'm happy to do it either way.
Yes, I will amend the motion, give them
Okay.
the option. I
Commissioner-
don't have a problem with that.
Hold on, let's just see if Commissioner
fine with
Kennelly, okay, Commissioner Kennelly agrees, motion so amended. Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, I'm okay with that motion as well. Again, I was just, actually and also, as far as the 10% goes, as part of this planning process, there was discussion over that, and.
This was a
we-
huge
thing,
factor
right,
in our discussion.
Right, and we didn't, but I sat at the table with people like Steve Grathwall and people
Yeah.
that were advocating, and Mike Tetro, I think, I work with him on that, and a lot of people were looking for a bigger number, and I was one of those people that, let's keep it at 10. We want to get stuff built. We don't want to create a regulation that can't.
I couldn't agree more.
can't-
But after all of that, we settled on a specific number.
Yeah.
Not less than 10%,
That's correct.
okay?
And-
That's where I'm coming out on this, okay?
And that's why I was like kind of just startled by this part of the application, because everything else was so technically correct. And it would be just as easy for them to say, well, let's architect it to 100 units with 10%. Why? I just don't
I
understand
don't
why they
either.
did that.
But you know what, it's
You
not,
know?
it's not even, it doesn't even matter, it's irrelevant. The applicant said, we'll do it either way if that's what you really want. How can we, as a commission, in the face of the applicant saying that, after all that work and all the effort and everything we have to deal with affordable housing in this town, sit here and say, no big deal?
But that's not what I said. I didn't say
Well,
no big deal.
you know, so anyway, the
certainly
point's
didn't
been
disregard-
made. We don't have to rehash it anymore
Well, I
because.
did not disregard the importance of the regulations, so I mean, I'm happy to change it, but
Okay.
I recognize the amount of work we put into it and what we did. I only said it because it was a way of saying, thank God we finally got a building down here and somebody's
Sure.
doing something, but I'm happy to change it.
All right, well, it has been, you have amended your motion to make the condition in the alternative. It's been seconded by.
But I don't want the record to say
Commissioner
that
Canelli.
I said it because it was no big deal.
Okay,
That's
well,
not what I said.
that's point taken. The second thing that I'd like to address is the commercial space under in the parking area. I agree that the calculation can be conducted that way, and we've done it before. My concern here is that the parking lot will simply become an amalgamation, and that the residents, because they're there and they want to park under the parking lot, I would if I lived in the building, will simply use all those spaces, and those spaces won't really be designated as commercial spaces. So my thought process on this, and I can't remember exactly how it was characterized, the public hearing, maybe some of you do. My thought process on this is to require that the parking be designated as commercial, and that those spaces be clearly designated with signage that parking for commercial, for the retail only. I'm interested to hear what you all have to say.
I
what
thought
you
that
think
the
about
applicant
this.
indicated they were going to do that, but if not, we can certainly make it a condition of approval, that's fine.
Okay, I mean, how do we feel about that?
Would that be for certain hours? 8 AM to 8 PM or
Well,
something
no,
like that?
because I don't think you can do that, and that's sort of my point, is that, in order for it to be counted as commercial space, it has to be exclusively designated as commercial space. It's being counted in the 70-30 split. Again, we spent a lot of time developing this. We had an application previously, same site, where we said, no, the 80-20 is not good enough. I just want to get it right. I want to make sure that we truly carry through on the intentions that we had and what the regulations require. So, that's my thought.
You're correct, but it would be nice to let the residents park there in the ice and snow after 8 or 9 o'clock. I mean, who cares if they're going to be empty all night? Now, if something's going to stay open far into the night, that's different. I mean, is there some way we can have the management do what it needs to do to keep it commercial? I mean, if they're going to get restaurants open till 11, then the residents shouldn't park there. But if it's just going to be empty nothingness after 6 o'clock, it's too bad to not let people park there in the bad weather.
Commissioner Calabrese?
So what happens on the flip side? Let's say they put some great retail spaces in there, and now all the customers are parking in my spot. What do I do as a resident? I would be upset about that. I think we leave it alone. I have no issue with the parking calculations. I think it's going to be fine. I like this facility. I like this building. That's my take on it. I think we're arguing over, peanuts right now.
Okay, anyone else? Commissioner Canelli?
Yeah, I absolutely respect the chairman's concern about getting this right, but I do kind of lean with Commissioner Calabrese on the point that ultimately, when I think about this in a real-world application, I don't imagine, there really isn't a lot other than this space to sell to these commercial tenants in terms of parking. There's nowhere else to go. So I think that ultimately, while of course the residents are going to be satisfied by the owners, but so too are going to have, the commercial tenants are going to have to be treated with the kind of respect that you see in other mixed-use environments that we have, for example, downtown. And I think they can work that out. So I don't feel particularly strongly motivated that we need to add conditions. I assume that the management of the facility will figure out how to make that work so that their commercial tenants feel like they're being appropriately served.
So in the future, just to sort of carry the conversation to a logical conclusion, in the future, if we get an application for a mixed-use development where there is covered parking and the applicant characterizes that as commercial space, we're going to be okay with that.
I mean, I think what we've learned here at our deliberations is meeting to meeting, nothing is necessarily precedent setting. I mean, I know certainly I've been through that here on a number of occasions on a lot of different issues that votes on various things that go one way, right in the same area, suddenly remarkably switch the other way sometimes. So whatever that might be. So I guess for me, having heard eloquently people talk about that there is no, absolute precedent, I'm comfortable here to go ahead and leave it as Commissioner Calabrese
If I could just make a quick comment, it goes along with what one of the commission members said before, too. It's the orientation of the parking that's important, too. If this parking garage was fronting on Commerce Drive and Black Rock Turnpike, open right to then I think you have a better determination that, well, maybe this is not meeting our intent. First of all, it's parking, it's not residential units. So, I mean, you're not going to get any more than 70% of the building being residential. I mean, it is parking. But secondly, along with your thought about future applications, as Mr. Canali, I think, did mention, the way you orientated the retail frontage on the fronting of the roads with the parking behind it, I think helps, at least in my opinion, the intent of what we're talking about as far as a mixed-use calculation and the parking used. I think in the future, if the parking spaces that's enclosed, it just basically is frontage on the street, I think you got a better argument at that point to say, well, we don't think this necessarily meets the requirement of a commercial percentage.
Yeah.
So I think you have that flexibility.
Sure, and, so in terms of, precedent, I agree that, the things we're talking about now are, in some things we're talking about are discretionary, others aren't. But we remarked that counting covered parking for a commercial area is not unprecedented because we did it at the Delamar, so we can do it here, right? And in future applications, we may hear arguments that it's okay to do it because we did it in this one, in the same way that we're talking about the Delamar. Does the Delamar have designated commercial versus residential, or is it just an amalgamation of covered parking?
I don't believe there's a designated area. There may be something for the hotel, but I haven't been in the covered parking area, but I don't think the bulk of the product.
I don't think it's necessarily an apples-to-apples comparison because it's kind of a hybrid. That application was allowed to spread their residential units into freestanding buildings that are, so it's a 50-50 calculation there. It's 50% commercial, 50% residential spread throughout the site, but it's not a single building like this application.
No, I can appreciate that.
Yep.
I just didn't know whether there was any designation in the covered parking, the underground parking.
Well, the simple answer is there's no condition of approval for that.
Right.
Right.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, I mean, Delamar even predates me, so that's a long time ago. But I do remember the one at the current Volkswagen site, the application we did approve, and that wasn't that long ago. It was in the last few years. Unfortunately, it was never built. So I'm okay with that. I kind of agree with Commissioner Calabrese. It is what it is. The building looks good. The parking looks good. Again, struggling back to when we were, passing these regulations, how we envisioned. I don't remember. I mean, the 70-30 split with a 5-story building. So there's creative ways you could do this architecturally, I suppose, and using the covered parking. But I think the parking, we want it to be as nice as it can for the residents, and they do have a second-level outdoor amenity deck that they're supposed to use. So they don't have any below-grade spaces. They have a deck to use, and I wouldn't really advocate messing with, changing that or making a requirement on that. I think it's okay. It is kind of precedent-setting, and it's more, it's an interpretation. I'd be okay with that. Because again, we do allow a 5-story building. So that is our, in our regulations, right? So
Fair
I'm okay
enough.
with that.
Fair enough. Okay. Anyone else have anything more to say on this? No? All right. So, does anyone else have any more comments or questions? I'm done. I'd just like to say that, I do appreciate this application very much, and I think it's going to be great for our town. Anyone else?
we have all the conditions, like stated, we're sure what we're doing? Do you
What
have
I
to get
have-
copy of them?
You're going to require that the final plans for building confirm and on as-built 70/30 calculation. You have a condition that the affordable units be not less than 10%. That will either then, gives them the choice of either providing the 11th affordable unit or reducing the total number of units to 100. A revised landscape plan is going to be submitted redistributing some of the shade trees within the parking field that they discussed at the hearing. And you agree to waive the sidewalk at Black Rock Turnpike.
That's it. Right? Yep. Okay. Motion is to approve with those stated conditions. We ready to vote? Well, hold on a second.
I'm sorry. I think this kind of in line with the obvious support this application has. I think you need to make a separate finding to approve the assignment of the transit-oriented development park first, and then the overall approval for the special permit.
Okay, so, can we table? Yeah, hold on. First, let's table the original motion.
Site
You-
plan, that's a
right?
site plan.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good. Motion to table by Commissioner Jacobson, second by Commissioner Kennelly. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, abstentions? All right, so that motion's tabled. Can I have a new motion to approve the application for designation of the Commerce Drive overlay?
I make that motion to approve the application for designation of the Commerce Drive overlay.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Jacobson,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Kennelly. Any discussion on that point? I think it meets all of our criteria for the regulations. We need to, all right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? All right, so that motion carries unanimously. You want to reintroduce your motion?
I make a motion to approve the development with all of the designated amendments that were listed.
Good. Second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Kennelly. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? The motion with conditions passes unanimously. Next item, compliances, 116 Sherman Street. Application of Jennifer Marks and Dominique Miller to establish a retail use in an existing building in the Center Design District.
Okay, this was tabled last time. I have some notes in the agenda staff comments that were sent. In addition to that, I was handed some new material today. The only departure from the material that's coming around is the letter that there's actually going to be 3 employees rather than 2 that I had indicated in my comments. You've seen them. I don't have anything to say beyond that. The sign has been redesigned in accordance with the sign that used to be there for the accountant. It's basically a 2x4 sign that it's going to be vinyl on wood with the street number on it as required, no phone number. But we did clarify some of the questions that were raised by the commission the last time. They're in the notes. If you've got any questions about that, I'm happy to jump in there.
I'll make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman, for
Motion
discussion
to
purposes.
approve by Commissioner Kennelly.
You're not giving us a picture of the sign?
That's this.
They have it.
This. Sorry. Yeah.
There was some concern last time because it was a picture of a sign they have in another location, it had a phone number on it. We require that the street number be on it. Instead, they'd certainly arranged to make that happen, and it's not out of character with what the previous sign was on the premises.
Thanks. Everybody have the sign there? All right, so we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly.
Second it.
Second by Commissioner Calabrese. Commissioner Kennelly?
I will support this. I think that they've addressed our issues. They've laid out when and where, what the hours are. There was some concern about, that element of this. I mean, I think 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week is a more intensive use than the accountant was. So if those of you who had concerns about those hours, psychic parties and stuff, I don't know that's something that needs to be addressed. With condition, I know that we really can address that. I mean, ultimately, it's within the limitations in that zone. They did address the issue with the sign, at least from what I can see related to what they've provided us here, they addressed the concerns that were raised last time. But I'm willing to hear any other additional concerns related to this.
Commissioner Calabrese?
Now, seeing that they are psychics, they knew I was going to support this application already. The one concern I have, and we raised this during the public hearing, I just want to make sure that this goes into the record, and I don't want to see the neon sign.
Right.
Period. Other than that, I support the application, not that neon sign.
Very good. Commissioner Parrish?
This is the point of curiosity for the staff. How did we receive this letter?
It was handed to me about an hour ago.
It was paper handy, because, I mean, it's an email from the applicant to C. Camerado at Minuteman Press. It's not a letter to the Planning and Zoning Commission, so somebody representing the applicant handed this piece of paper
Yes,
to you?
the applicant did.
Okay.
I
Well, I mean,
sent-
it talks about their hours of operation and things
Right,
we asked
right.
for, but it just,
I had a long conversation with the applicant following your last meeting where I raised, shared the concerns. She indicated to me what her response to those were. I articulated those in my staff notes due to, we didn't have there's some complications with the applicant that I don't need to go into right now
Okay.
that prevented that from occurring before tonight. So I tried to act on her behalf.
I appreciate that, Mr. White. It's just an interesting way to get a statement of use. I mean, not that you necessarily have to hire an attorney, but at least it should be a letter addressed to the commission.
No, that's an
not-
important point to make for the record as to how this was, part of the file, or became part of the file.
Yeah, it's pretty much along the lines of the conversation that we had. The thing that expands upon it does outline the hours of operation, and it increases the employee count by one, but it's essentially the same information, I think, that we had put together for you in the staff notes based on my previous conversations with the applicant.
Yeah. That being said, my biggest concern is the same as Mr. Calabrese, is the sign. I mean, it's a residential-looking building on a street in our downtown area. There's a lot of, buildings that look like that on Sherman Street, and it doesn't sound like they're going to have a huge volume of customers coming in. Maybe this is wrong. They say 3 to 4 people a day, and they're open 12 hours a day. People must spend a lot of time there. But, that's not...
It's not for us.
That's not for us to decide. It's a permitted use, as long as they don't have, as long as their sign complies with our regulations, has the number on it, nothing lit up, I'll support it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner
No
Francis?
problem with having this operate 7 days a week in the center commercial district?
No.
Okay.
We no longer have blue laws in Connecticut.
9 to 9, 7 days a week.
Exactly, yeah. So, Commissioner Calabrese, is a concern about the neon sign because in their...
The current
The
facility.
current location has a neon sign.
Yeah, the previous location had a sign that
Yeah.
would no longer be permitted under our current regulations, so would not, we've adjusted our regulations since then.
So, I mean, we obviously all feel pretty strongly about...
We can make it a condition of approval if that makes you feel better.
And so if the...
The
neon
applicant is
sign-
here and listening to your conversation, and I think the
So-
message has been received.
If we did make it a condition of approval, then if the neon sign was to appear, their approval could be rescinded by action by us, rather than simply a zoning enforcement measure, right? Right, which is a pretty big stick, yeah. So, all right, then do we want to, who made the initial motion? Commissioner Kennelly?
I'll accept that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and who seconded the motion? Seconded and approved, all right. Motion's been amended and seconded. All right, so the motion on the table is to approve with the condition. Any other comments, discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? The item is approved unanimously with conditions. Next item is 1809 Post Road, application of Peter Del Franco for an open trellis over an existing outdoor dining patio in the Center Design District.
This is Avellino's Restaurant. The owner wishes to do just what that says, an open wood trellis above the footprint of the existing dining deck. They are looking to provide some element of shade. There is no proposal to expand the seasonal use here. They're going to maintain their seasonal use. There's no permanent roof, or no roof at all. It's an open trellis, and there are no proposed enclosed walls or ceilings here.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion approved by Commissioner Calabrese,
Second?
second by Commissioner Francis. Mr. Calabrese?
think it's a good application, one of my favorite restaurants, and I'm very familiar with it, so it's well needed.
Good pizza you can enjoy under a trellis. Anyone else?
Makes a nice streetscape.
Well, you know, my initial reaction was, isn't that a sidewalk? Isn't that a, you know, the seating area, the outdoor seating area is on the sidewalk, which has been enclosed by, you know, the railing and such, and now is going to be, you know, further enclosed, but it's still on the sidewalk. And do we want to see these kinds of enclosures all up and down the post road over the outdoor dining? And I don't know whether that is something which even could happen. You know, here there may be some property issues that are special that make this different from that. But how would you feel if suddenly we had, you know, Wild Rice come in with an application to put a trellis over their outdoor dining, which is extending over into the sidewalk on the post road?
Well, can I ask a question of staff about that?
Of course, yeah.
My only thought is,
Out there.
no, I understand your example. I was actually for example, a long time ago, Tomato and Basil wanted a trellis and we voted it down. I don't know if any of you remembered. We let them keep sort of a patio but with no trellis over it, and boy, in July, it's murder to sit out there. But I'm just wondering, what is, and I apologize, after 8 years I should know this, but what is the regulatory interaction here regarding having a trellis that somehow might encroach, or does this not? How is it that you brought us to this point with the application?
All of the outdoor dining that we have presently, with the exception of Centro and what's now Old Post Tavern, they have leases. Their patios extend onto property that's owned by the town, and they have leases with the town. All the other establishments are contained within private property. Post Road is kind of a unique environment in that the sidewalk extends from the curb basically to the face of the buildings on the Post Road. And for the most, in all of those issues, Wild Rice, for example, their seating does not extend beyond their property line. Multo, unless they're going beyond what they're approved for, does not go beyond the property line, even though in the absence of that seating, it would appear that that's the public domain because it blends from the curb all the way to the face of the building as paved sidewalk. So none of those restaurants actually encroach into the right-of-way.
So in other words, to answer the chairman's question, if I already have dining areas and I put a trellis over a Wild Rice, or if I do it here at Avellino's, what I'm doing is essentially putting a trellis over my property that I already have control as a property owner of. I'm not putting it over a town sidewalk, am I?
Correct.
Okay.
That's true, but depending on the location, there are differences in how some of these have been viewed, and in many cases, in the absence of this seating, yes, there would be more room for people to walk on the sidewalk.
But they would be walking on private property.
Correct. And in most of the other establishments, like Wild Rice, for example, in the off-season, there's nothing out there, so...
But nonetheless...
Yes, it would be on private property if there was, yes.
That still is private property.
Correct.
So essentially that answers the
So
question.
it does, yeah. No, absolutely it does, because if there is a public space, then I think we ought to be thinking hard about whether we want to give permission to people for erecting a permanent structure over that public space. A private permanent structure over public right-of-way. But this is private property.
Yes.
This doesn't extend into the public right-of-way. Right, okay. On that basis, I would support it. Mr. Barron?
Yeah, I had some concerns about this application. One, I know it's not the same thing, but as I stated before, there is an application in the Brick Walk where they wanted to enclose the outdoor dining or put cover over it, and they put this metal structure up. And it was supposed to come down, and then they said, well, we can't take it down, and we let it stay up. And now the restaurant is closed, and it looks terrible. So my concern with this is what it's going to look like, and what it'll look like in the 5 months out of the year where it's not doing anything. It's not supporting outdoor dining, but it's still up. So just trying to get a feel for what this trellis will look like. It may be on their property, but certainly visually, it affects the streetscape and what I consider the sidewalk. But, you know, their patio is already on that sidewalk, so it's not really increasing the footprint of that.
Yeah, but
Some,
do we have, I mean, I guess because it's the center design district, we have some discretion in that sense, but if it wasn't, would we even have a right to talk about what it looked like if it was on their private property? You know, you see what I'm saying?
I think the
we do,
regulations
because-
refer you to the standards in our regulations that call for whether you think visually this is in harmony and in keeping with the positive impact on its environment.
Right, and 1210 is our all architectural and community design standards.
Correct.
Okay, now, like this may be fine, but now, you know, suppose we see more, in effect, permanent structures pop up. Again, to me, you know, people walking don't know whose property it is. They know that
Right.
there's a structure on the sidewalk, and that's what this is. So I had some concerns. My question for staff is, in your notes, in the agenda staff comments, it said, element of shade. I can appreciate that. Nobody wants to be sitting out there under the blazing sun. And I just sat under an awning over the weekend, and I can tell you it's nice, but why do we feel this will enhance the actual aesthetic appeal versus the uncovered patio? You guys
Well,
wrote
that's-
that, so I just want your opinion of why you think that.
That's part of their intent of the application. Those are my words. You don't necessarily,
No, but if you...
they're not binding on you, but that's just
But I
what the
respect...
applicant intends.
But you wrote that, not the applicant, so...
Correct.
Okay. So you believe that having this trellis will enhance the aesthetic appeal versus...
Well, I think that's part of what he's trying to do, and indeed provide a potential partial shade amenity, while at the same time, he thinks it's going to make the front of his facility look more attractive.
Because that's what I'm all about. If this looks better, I have no reason not to support it.
Well, that's the intent of the property.
If it doesn't look better, I have no reason to support it. That's pretty much it. I mean...
We all have a picture here,
Right,
that's
right.
included in our packet, from the middle of the winter.
Yeah.
The patio structure is still there.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not like it comes down. Putting something over this isn't going to make it any worse. It's going to look better.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
Look, here's the thing, I agree with you on this point too, Commissioner Calabrese, in that, one concern I have always had about that corner is that it is kind of naked, if you know what I mean. You got all those cars going by there, that corner and all. So I like the idea of doing what you can to try to make it feel a little bit more inviting. Again, this kind of structure out out kind of brings, again, to me, kind of brings the flat surface, out. Breaks it out, that's the word, thank you. So that, from a aesthetics point of view, I mean, at least I think this is a step in the right direction, but you're right, there always are unintended consequences of any decision we make. But looking at this, I'm leaning with Commissioner Calabrese that I think it is an aesthetic upgrade, and so that's another reason to support it. Okay.
Anyone else?
Does this have an open weave, like my concept of a trellis?
Yes.
Kind of looks like a roof.
Yeah, one of the pages, if I may, Jim, the second page, there's two drawings on that second page. One, the top drawing is a front-on view, in the bottom sketch is top looking from above.
down.
So those lines, those skinny lines going
Yeah.
vertically are the open trellis one-by-one elements. So,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
so it is. It's, they'll grow vines or whatever, I'm sure. I mean, so from an attractiveness standpoint, I do think it's attractive. My issue was one about public right-of-way and private property, so. Anyone else have any comments? We ready to vote? Motion on the table is to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? Item carries unanimously. Next is 40 Reef Road. Application of Landmark Homes, Inc. to establish residential use on the second floor in an existing building and reestablish office use on the first floor in the Center Design District.
Okay, a couple meetings ago, back in April, again, this is an old house on Reef Road that's been used for an office use. It's down between Sherman Street and the Post Road, kind of ballpark, a couple doors down from the Firehouse Deli. A couple meetings ago, back in April, the commission approved conversion of the first floor to retail use. That tenant did not make good with their proposal, so now the applicant wishes to abandon that approval and continue the first floor as it is now, as an office, and rather modify the second floor, make it a single residential apartment, which is also permitted downtown. It meets the size requirement. Parking is met the total of 7 spaces, 5 for the office, 2 for the apartment, without any reduction under our regulations, and there are 7 on site, and there are no exterior physical changes to the building proposed.
Motion to approve?
Motion approved by Commissioner Kennelly. Second by Commissioner Jacobson.
Meets our regs. A small tiny residential thing like this is good in the sense that you have, I think, having people living and working and having that kind of mix is a fine thing, so I'm fine with it.
Any other comments?
I agree.
Anyone else? No, I agree. This is about as straightforward as it's going to get tonight. Everybody ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The item passes unanimously. Very good. And that does it for our executive session. We'll go to a public hearing in a moment. For everybody, all the members of the public that are here to speak, thank you for coming. So the way public hearings work is the applicant will come up and present their application. When they are finished, the public will have a chance to speak. Public will have a chance to speak. Everyone who wishes to be heard will be heard. No time limit. Just ask you to keep your comments germane to the application and the issues that we have before us, okay? Once the public is finished speaking, then the applicant will have a rebuttal. And when the applicant is done with their rebuttal, the public hearing on that item is closed. And then we'll call the next item, okay? So the first item is, which we'll call, apparently we're going to take a short break here, is 524 Pequot Avenue, and then we'll have 309 Barberry Road. All right? So we'll adjourn for 5 minutes to set up.
Yeah.
You could count that.
Yeah, it changed,
All right. I'll call the meeting back to order. There's one other thing that I forgot to mention. We have a strict curfew here of 11 o'clock. If we have a public hearing that is ongoing and we come to 11 o'clock, we will adjourn, and that hearing will be continued to our next regular session. But I just want to let everybody know that up front, okay, so there are no surprises. All right, so I'll call the first items. 524 Pequot Avenue, special exception application of Southport Congregational Church for the construction of a detached storage building in the Residence A and R3 zones.
Good evening. My name is David Huntington. I'm an engineer and surveyor in Fairfield, and I'm representing the Southport Congregational Church on this application. We are proposing to build a 25 by 45 foot storage building as noted on the shaded area on the plan. Our statement of use is incorrect, that it says 24 by 25, but it's actually 24 by 45. This building will be about a story and a half to story and 3/4. It's not a full 2-story building. It meets all the zoning regulations, it meets all of the parking regulations, and it's pretty straightforward, and I don't believe I need to take up any more of your time unless you have some questions.
Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Huntington? No?
I do have, Jack Frenzen, our architect, will explain the building to you.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I'm Jack Franson, also here to represent Southport Congregational Church. And Dave did a good job of explaining the project. I do have a floor plan. As Dave explained, there's a loft. I should give a little background. Our church, as you probably know, has a very popular thrift shop, and people make donations. And we also have a very wonderful designer showcase every November. And both of these ministries that we call them need lockable storage, and and at certain times we just don't have room in the church building itself. The thrift shop takes up the whole basement of the church. The kind of modern wing is all classrooms. And with the designer showcase, all the furniture in the building literally goes into those containers that we have had in the past in our parking lot. So the intent of this building is to be able to have some lockable storage for the thrift shop for donations, to seasonally be able to move all the furniture out of the building for the designer showcase. Also, there is an indoor parking space for a church van or a church vehicle. As Dave explained, the building's 45 feet long, 24 feet deep, so on the footprint it's 1080 square feet. The height is 18.75 feet. Architecturally speaking, we decided to Gothicize the building because the church is a Gothic Revival stone building. We're in the Southport Historic District, and we'll have to go to them if we get approved by you. The building is board and batten siding, wood windows and doors, and a wood cedar roof. And we have an artist rendition done by our summer intern, who is none other than the minister's son, who's attending Syracuse University. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Franson? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this item? Nope. Okay, very good. With that, I'll close the public hearing on this item. Thank you. Next item is 309 Barbary Road, special exception application of the American Institute for Neuro Integrated Development, Inc., to establish a school and offices for charitable institutions in an existing building in the AA zone.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Bill Fitzpatrick. I'm an attorney in Fairfield with the law firm of Fitzpatrick, Frey & Bologna. We have offices at 1735 Post Road. I'm here this evening representing American Institute for Neurointegrative Development, better known as AIND, the owner of property located at 309 Barbary Road in the Southport section of Fairfield. This property is located in the Residence AA zone, which requires a minimum lot area of 1 acre, and this property contains 11.74 acres. This property was formerly owned by the Diocese of Bridgeport, was part of a larger parcel of land. The property to the north, which to my recollection was primarily wooded, I think it had a baseball field and some trails, was transferred to the town of Fairfield for open space purposes. This property, the remaining land, again 11.74 acres, and included 2 buildings. One was utilized by the diocese as a grammar school. Second building was utilized by the diocese as a high school, specifically Christ the King Prep. I would like to submit some documentation I obtained from the Diocese of Bridgeport in terms of the enrollment at Christ the King Prep. If you look at this form that you will see, this is from the Diocesan School Office for the year 1968 to 1969, and it shows that for Christ the King Preparatory School, Barbary Road, Southport, that there is a number of students, it's in the upper mid-right, there were 132 students at this school. Giant Steps was opened in the former grammar school building in February of the year 2000. The zoning application to open Giant Steps was approved by the Plan and Zoning Commission in April of 1999 and was the subject of an appeal to the Superior Court. The Superior Court dismissed that appeal and upheld the Giant Steps approval. The second building, which was the Christ the King Prep School, has remained unused. Several discussions have taken place over the years concerning possible uses of the building, but to my knowledge, no application was ever filed with the Plan and Zoning Commission.
Before we get too far from that, because it's going to seem totally out of context later on in the hearing, when did it close? How long has it been vacant?
Best of my knowledge, 71.
Thank you.
The present application concerns the renovation of the vacant building, including the addition of a small service cafe in the front of the building, as well as the addition of a vestibule for security reasons. 6 offices on the second floor will be made available to nonprofit organizations which agree to provide vocational opportunities for the young adults. What we're talking about is helping with making copies, that kind of thing. Schools and nonprofit organizations are permitted uses via special exception approval in the Residence AA zone. The presentation the Commission will hear tonight will include Philip Tizo of Rose Tizo and Company of Fairfield, Valerie Fletcher of the Institute for Human-Centered Design of Boston, Massachusetts, Michael Galante of Frederick P. Clark Associates of Rye, New York and Fairfield, and Kathy Roberts, the founder and executive director of Giant Steps, and I will conclude. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Mr. Phil Tizo, a professional engineer with Rose Tizo and Company of Fairfield.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Phil Tizo from the firm of Rose Tizo and Company with offices at Brentwood Avenue in Fairfield. The subject property, let me pull this closer, is an 11.7 acre parcel of land at the end of Barberry Road. There are 2 existing buildings. The existing southerly building is used for the Giant Steps program. The northerly building is the next step facility that we're here seeking approval on. This is the existing survey, which shows the existing conditions. I just want to draw attention to the fact that this is the former high school building. There is an existing large parking lot in front of the building and a parking lot along the side with an access way to the rear entrance. Turning to the site plan, there is the only change we're proposing with regard to the Giant Steps building is to restripe the parking lot in a more organized and efficient manner. We are creating 95 parking spaces in this parking lot. There are areas of the existing parking lot that are just not striped.
Are you adding spaces?
Pardon me?
Are you adding spaces to that one?
It's not easy to answer that because there's no existing stripes on half of the pavement. So people park there, but somewhat inconsistently. So we're striping it to make it more efficient.
So in that one, you're not expanding any of the asphalt, you're just restriping the
That is
lot.
correct. Moving to the former high school building, we are proposing to add 2 small additions. There's a first floor addition which is a bump out in the front of the building. That addition is 1,667 square feet. On the roof of the middle portion of the building has a two-story, if you're facing it, the two-story addition or portion to the left, and two one-story portions to the middle and the right. The right is a taller building because it was a multi-purpose room. But we are proposing to put a second floor addition basically in the middle of the middle addition, the middle portion of the building, so that this crosshatched area is a 1,235 square foot bump up on the roof. And the architecture of the building would be described a little bit later in our presentation. We are making a couple of modifications to the parking area. The existing parking area extends all the way past the front of the building right now. And in an effort to create a expanded and safe green area for recreational use in this portion of the building, we're pulling back the parking area in front of the building. There's a second component to that arrangement, and that is to provide a safe way for parents to bring their children to this facility and a convenient and safe place to temporarily park to bring their children into the building. We are slightly expanding the pavement along the side of the building to, it's currently a single loaded parking bay with an access way. We're making it a double loaded parking bay. There are a total of 46 parking spaces for this area, and we have done a calculation based on the use. There are no regulations with regard to this type of facility specifically, but since there is a office use upstairs for the nonprofit entities that will rent those rooms, we used a conservative figure of, actually we calculated it based on 4 per 1,000 square feet, and that came up to 21 spaces, but we bumped it up to 24 spaces, figuring there could be as much as 4 people per room. 4 times 6 rooms, 24 spaces. There will be a required number of parking spaces for staff of an additional 17 staff people, which brings the total up to 41 spaces. We've got 46, so there's a few extra for visitors and parents. The current parking volume needed to operate the Giant Steps is 80 parking spaces. We've got 95 stripes, so we've got an additional 15 spaces in this lot. Additional 15, additional 4.
You have a question about parking?
No, that's what we said before. so.
I'm
I'll
sorry to
let it fit.
interrupt.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead. I'll ask you when you're done, Mr. Chiso.
We are providing or actually we're enhancing, there's an existing driveway behind the building that's going to get reconstructed and widened just slightly to provide, drop-off area, and there's a trash bin that's going to go at the end of that way. We would like to provide a privacy fence also around that parking area, which did not show up on the plans I think you have, but we would like to propose that as a privacy. Moving on to the drainage plan, I'm just going to briefly say that Laura Pooley, has reviewed it. She has their conclusion is that the drainage is perfectly acceptable. We've reduced the runoff for all the required storms. We've got a water quality device that increases water quality and a detention system that creates groundwater recharge. Pretty straightforward. The rest of the utilities are there for the building. It was hooked up to utilities. They'll be getting new service lines. Excuse me. There's a typical soil erosion control plan, nothing out of the ordinary, wraps around the developed area. And then we've got a site, or a landscape plan that just adds additional greenery in the islands surrounding the new parking lot and some additional shrubbery on either side. And that is pretty much the site plan.
Commissioner Barron?
Yeah, Mr. Teza, you're talking about renovating the building. I haven't been on the site. What is the condition of the existing building? I mean, it's been vacant for like almost 40 years, so what's it like now? What really needs to be done to renovate this building?
It looks like a 40-year, a building that's been vacant for 40 years. I mean, it's just, you know, it needs work. It needs a lot of work, and the plan is to completely renovate the existing building and put those two small additions in to enhance the new use, you know, and expand on the amenities for the new use.
Yeah, I mean, I get the additions. I'm just worried about like the existing building, just, you know, the walls, the ceilings, the floors, you know, anything they might find in that building that's been, you know, is anything?
I am not entirely familiar with all those details, but I do know that it's a concrete block building.
Okay.
You know, I'm sure there's probably been some water damage along the line. All that has to get fixed, brought up to code.
Okay. And then my next one is this, I mean, maybe this is more for Mr. Fitzpatrick, because I'd like to go on the property. Are we able to go on and walk the property? Okay, thank you.
There is a gate, so we'll make an arrangement.
Oh, we have to call first through the zoning office or something, or? I can't call you.
No. We'll put the request in through staff, and we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Jacobson. Use your mic, please. Use your mic. Use your mic.
You mentioned water damage. You're going to check it for mold, of course, right?
Yes.
And asbestos?
Yes.
You've done that, okay.
We can't have you testifying and speaking from the gallery. If you want to be called as a witness, then you can certainly come up and introduce yourself.
We'll give you some testimony on that point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you. So, anyone else? I had a couple of questions for you. So in the parking lots, on the landscape plan, SP4, you mentioned some additional shrubbery and the like, but I didn't see any shade trees in the parking lot or in the restriped parking lot. Is there any intention to,
There isn't, although I believe that could be, we're open to suggestions.
Okay. I don't know if you've taken a look at the, not so new at this point, regulations for shade trees in parking lots and the like. I don't think that the new parking lot in the front of the building, the front of the new building, I don't know that, doesn't appear to comply with that.
That parking lot, Mr. Chairman, is a foreshortening of an existing parking lot. The existing parking lot expands,
Yeah, up top.
yes, toward the town open space.
Right. So I'm talking about the lot that's in front of the building to the northeasterly. It's the two. Yeah. No, just go point your finger a little bit up, right there. Yeah.
That's an existing parking lot that we've expanded
Right.
to the south, if you figure the open space is north.
Yeah.
If the commission deems that that warrants parking lot landscaping, we'll be happy to do so.
Okay, I guess, wanted to understand, the position, and what I heard was that it's your belief that because you're altering an existing lot, that you don't need to comply with the new regulations, but if we want to make that a condition, then you're willing to...
That's
to work with
correct.
that. Okay, very good, thanks. Then, you mentioned, and I don't know whether you're the right person to talk about this, that there's going to be some new office space for rental. And, to accommodate the new use for this building, you've sort of trying to figure out how many spaces that you need, right? Don't we have regulations that speak to a calculation for, office space?
Yes, and we utilize that calculation.
Okay, so using that calculation is how you arrived at the, I kind of thought, it kind of sounded about right, but...
It's the school part of the equation.
That's
It's the
not,
Giant
right.
Steps use part of the equation that doesn't have any
Right.
regs because of the educational aspect. And what we tried to do was to utilize the number of staff we know are going to come and work from there to come up with a number that made sense.
So if I'm understanding the 46, it's 6 rooms times 4 people per room, so each person having a car, and then 17 employees and 5 visitor spaces for the building.
Actually, if you used your regulations to calculate the office, it would only be 21 spaces rather than 24 on a square foot basis. It's 5,100 and change.
Yep.
So what we tried to do was to, sort of work with what we had and take a conservative approach to come up with a number.
Yeah, so I guess my question in the way that you've described it is that you're not allowing for any parking spaces for the students, right?
No.
I understand that we're dealing with, special needs
No, the students will not be driving.
But these are adults that are, the facility is proposed for adult education.
That's
And
correct.
I have to profess some level of ignorance about the kinds of students that are, going to be offered these programs and whether they drive or whether they're just going to be dropped off or how that's all going to work.
The clientele for next steps will not be driving.
Okay, all right, very good. So what are and then Attorney Fitzpatrick, you mentioned that, that the additional space is going to be for nonprofits. You say that in the letter, but to be made available provided they agree to provide vocational opportunities. And in your remarks, and I know it might have been a little offhand, but you said it's like helping making copies and the like. So it's like office clerical work.
Yes.
All right.
Perhaps some filing, things of that sort.
So, can you talk a little bit about this new use that's being proposed in six new offices?
Well, the idea is that, and Kathy Roberts can speak to this more eloquently than I can for sure, but the basic idea is that the Next Steps program does not need to utilize the entire building. And so there was some additional space available, and it made sense.
And we're building a little bit more space that's being designated for
But
this use, right?
The additional space that we're building doesn't have anything to do with the...
Oh, it's not, I'm sorry, I thought, I saw some of the new space as being designated for part of these
For the
offices.
offices? No.
So that's,
Cafe at the,
No, there's a cafe,
There's a security bubble.
there's a security
Got it.
vestibule, there's a small cafe,
Okay.
a service cafe, and then there's like a greenhouse on the second floor. It's, it is not anything to do with those existing. The office space we're proposing to utilize as office space for the 501c3s is existing space.
Okay.
Obviously,
Very-
it'll be renovated.
Okay.
But the idea is that we needed a use that was appropriate for the zone. We wanted to find a use that sort of fit with the Next Steps use. And the idea is that these, some of these students can perform some clerical tasks, can do some filing, can do some copying, and that it would be helpful.
so I understand the connection on the second half of what you said. How does establishing new office space in a residential zone fit within the zone?
Charitable institutions are permitted use by special exception in the residence AA zone. And obviously, I think you should make it a condition of approval, if we get to that point, that they be demonstrated to be 501c3s. That's the whole idea. This is not and the rent, Kathy Roberts again can speak to that. This is not designed to be a significant money-making proposition. The rent will be at least reasonable. The idea is to have somebody in the building that will provide some opportunities for the young adults.
Okay, great. Well, I'll be interested to hear a little bit more about that. Commissioner Canale?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up. I do want to understand sort of what that relationship is. We've already acknowledged that there will be this condition of approval, they're 501c3s, et cetera. This isn't a stealth office building, is essentially, that's not what this is.
No.
But I would like to have a better understanding of, and maybe also some of the folks here who are, concerned and want to understand, what are some of those kinds of nonprofits? It may not be an exact list or something, and maybe, how those relationships will work. Because, I understand the concept. I've seen where these kind of spectrum disorder, these young adults with spectrum disorder, but, further along in the spectrum where the transition is a difficult one, is one where they benefit from these very, these kind of environments. Hudson Enterprises in New Jersey, for example, does excellent work, but again, it's done in kind of very small office context. They do shredding and other kinds of things like that. But hopefully there can be some discussion, if you could, maybe talk about those relationships, because you don't want anyone to have a misunderstanding.
Oh, no, Kathy Roberts can address that fully.
I'll be frank. When I first read the letter of intent and conceptualized what this might be, it was the nonprofits actually participating in the instruction of the students and going down and doing vocational training.
No.
Maybe there's a little bit of wood shop or some kind of, crafts, and that there was a collaboration between the nonprofits and the educational institution. What I'm hearing is a little bit different from what I first perceived.
No, perhaps my statement of intent was poorly worded. The intent is to have, and you are free to make another condition of approval, that there be no more than 6. The objective is to have 6 offices set up, obviously for 501c3s, that there will be some opportunity for the young adults to be of some service to those tenants. They are not involved in the educational, recreational, therapeutic process in any fashion other than that.
And not specialized necessarily in dealing with autistic kids. They're sort of, the nonprofit would be just, it could be any type of nonprofit.
Correct.
Type of.
Obviously better if it's in the mental health field, but that's, Kathy Roberts will speak to that.
Right, okay. Anyone else have any questions at this point?
At this point, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Valerie Fletcher of the Institute for Human-Centered Design from Boston, Massachusetts. I would like to submit the CV for Ms. Fletcher.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Very pleased to be here, and Commissioners, appreciate your time this evening and the opportunity to present. Let me say that I had the privilege of meeting Kathy Roberts and learning about this remarkable organization back in 2009. Kathy was at that time interested in maximizing the benefit of the environment that they owned with the 2 buildings and the 12 acres. And we are an international organization that focuses on the role of design of environments that make the most of environments to support people with functional limitations. Kathy is also somebody that I came to recognize as an innovator and somebody who is pulling off something that very few have. Kathy is serving children now in 5 to 22-year-olds who are among the most complex and difficult people on the spectrum. When Kathy began the school, the spectrum was still very small. We are now looking at 1 in 66 children in America who are being diagnosed with autism. Kathy has been prescient in being concerned that the fate of those children when they reached 22 was a fate in which they fell off a cliff. And they went on waiting lists for state services that often went on for 10 and 12 and 15 years. And that often resulted in nothing better than a sheltered workshop. If you've ever seen a sheltered workshop, you wouldn't want any child or grandchild of yours to have any part of it. So Kathy has had a vision of maximizing what they are doing in their really remarkably successful model for 5 to 22-year-olds, but really looking at what happens after graduation, when so many young people are really at home with nothing to do. And we have explored a variety of options. Our option for you today is the most modest of options for a property that we have carefully scrutinized. I went in that property for the first time when I visited the campus in 2009. At that time, we were unclear whether this very simple, very classic 60s building had value. It had not been used in so long. It was remediated for lead and asbestos, but at this point it had been empty so long, there was a lot of water damage, a lot of graffiti. It was not a place that was clearly viable. And we had that very carefully scrutinized. And it was determined that the structure of the building, this very simple, adaptable structure, had value. And then it made more sense to look at that as an asset and figure out how to take it down even more. It's very much bare bones, but the windows aren't appropriate for today and our expectations on sustainability, that there was tremendous deterioration of wood, the doors are the wrong size, and all systems had to be replaced. There was no way that this was an environmentally sustainable building in its current shape, but it was a shell that made great sense practically and environmentally to keep. So that was always our thought. What we have come up with is, as Mr. Teaser has explained, we are looking at using the existing footprint with the addition of the piece in the middle that adds a story to the very skinny middle of this building. We're basically looking at a very simple two-story box. We are adding to the front. When you come to visit the campus, you'll see that what constitutes a front is just a mess. It really is nothing worth saving. It does not in any way identify this as a welcoming environment. Part of the magic of this campus is that this is a phenomenally attractive, peaceful community, a quiet residential neighborhood, and then 38 acres of woodland, public woodland around this parcel make for an extraordinary environment in which children who are among the most complex disabilities we ever see have benefited enormously. This is a unique environment. And Kathy Roberts has had a vision of maximizing this unique environment, and that's what we seek to do with this building, that it remains low scale, low intensity, and something that is very much about making the most of the services they're already offering. So what we have here, and Phil, I think we want to look at, could we have, on the first floor of the building, we are really looking at the addition of this front space that will allow a new vestibule, a new entry, a means of securing the building, also of making the building more welcoming. This floor is giant step space. When you come to the campus to visit, I would suggest you also visit the Giant Step School, which is one of those places that makes magic out of quite small congested space. It isn't a place I would choose to work. There's 3 and 4 people working in every room. The director works in a tiny little office that was carved out of the hallway. They are tight for space. Whatever they do, they are shifting something else out of that space to make for the next thing they're trying to do in the course of a day. So they are tight for space. They are maximizing this space to get more rehab space, more art and music, which is a distinguished part of their history and part of what they do every day in the other school, remarkably in environments that are not designed for it, that don't have the acoustical conditions that make any sense for that kind of activity. So this will be designed to be appropriate for this population and for the Giant Steps children to make use of this who are in the school, as well as young adults who may be working upstairs. It is the vision of work and opportunity and continued growth and development for the young people. We're really thinking from 22 to 35. One of the people who's been a tremendous asset in understanding the phenomenon of autism is Kathy's medical director, who has made it clear that these children actually develop well past 22. They continue to grow and develop and evolve into their 20s. It's a slow process, and the opportunity to stay engaged in a social environment is enormously beneficial. What Kathy has envisioned is normal work, not a sheltered workshop, but normal work, the ordinary, low-key work of an office environment or a nonprofit kind of environment. I run a nonprofit. I understand what it's like to have interns in that environment. This is very similar to that idea. We have also added a green roof, a modest green roof to the building. This has always been a vision of the building and what it could be. It is very modest, but it is a way to engage young people and the students in an activity around natural vegetation, growing things, and learning from that opportunity too. Again, very modest. We are putting in an elevator. The elevator and a set of stairs go to the roof. Let me actually explain. On the first floor, we also have a place for families to meet, which is a big challenge for this population. Families are extremely dependent on the support of one another, often dealing with these issues in isolation that are enormously demanding, often 18 and 20 hours a day with their child. The family support function has been a key identity for Giant Steps from the get-go. We're also looking at a food place, not a food making, but of really prepared foods coming in at this point, but a shared space for eating. This is a population of young people and people with disabilities who have social challenges. The process of eating together is actually a very important part of normalization, of a life that has the qualities we all expect of life. So that is part of what goes on the first floor. And we're using the shell of the structure of the classrooms on the second floor. Just so you know, you can walk up there now and walk down and see the classrooms on both sides. Part of what is appealing about it, as limited as the appeal is of that building, you're actually able to look at the woods. There's a quality of that building that is really defined by the views at those windows. It's really an extraordinarily appealing small building. Sorry, we're looking at existing and proposed. You can see the profile is the same except for this addition here, which really brings it up to what exists on the other two sides of the building. And we're looking at completely new windows. None of the windows are worth saving, and all new doors. And a much more welcoming facade with a glass face. Right now you have a sort of massive concrete block, very 60s. And this is just showing the rear of the building. Right now, really nothing to add the kind of control we need to have in terms of deliveries, in terms of trash. All of that is being addressed in the renovation. The profile doesn't change substantially in terms of windows. As you can see, the original gym had only the door. That's all that we'll have in the new building or in the renovated building. And this is a visual that gives you an understanding of what the space looks like. There is minimal change from what you see from outside of the campus. It is a profile that doesn't change. One of the things that is problematic today is that the exterior of the building is extremely shabby. We are not yet resolved on the paint colors of the building, but we have actually worked with Giant Steps to repaint their existing interiors and add some paint detail on the outside. opting for very subtle colors. We're probably looking at cream and a soft green for accent, but very subtle color on the outside of the building. Phil, do we have one more board? That's it. This, I think we have one of the, oh, okay. Okay, and I think, just to clarify, we are the architects of record on the project, and within our team, we also have the landscape architect. Her name is Jennifer Brook, and she actually has been doing a great many parking lots that have the detail you suggested. We've really gone for plain vanilla at this stage and keep it as simple as possible. If there is the opportunity, and certainly if there is the request, it is more than possible to make something that is much more attractive. Part of what we're concerned about is that we really elevate the quality of environmental sustainability in all of the materials. That's true on the outside and on the inside of the building, so that we're really maximizing the environmental and social sustainability. So we're looking at every detail and every choice we make to support an environment that is conducive to a peaceful and supportive place for people on the spectrum and everyone else. I want to also just make a note about so the designers are folks who are external. We have engaged local subs and experts such as Mr. Tiso, and our contractor is currently being interviewed. We have local contractors. We are not choosing our contractor on the basis of low bid. We're choosing our contractor on the basis of what we learn about them from the people they've worked with before, and truthfully, their commitment to this project, that they actually see this as important. They see the environment as important. They see the protection of the peace of the neighborhood as important, and we intend to do contracts with with the final contractor that will be respectful of time of day for construction work to go on, of deliveries and when those occur. But that is something in mitigation of noise and of dirt, another thing that we've already had discussions about. But those are the kinds of things that we have to protect, partly because it is critical for the well-being of the neighborhood, but it is absolutely essential for the children who are served by Giant Steps, who are more vulnerable than any one of us to that kind of disruptive experience. So thank you. Is there any question, or shall I turn it back to Attorney Fitzpatrick?
Anyone have any questions? Commissioner Kennelly.
Thanks. Were you involved with the consultation with the Fairfield Police and the discussion of the extension area that was for security?
No, I was not.
I'll just ask Ms. Roberts
Okay.
about it when she talks.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Well, I
sorry.
had questions about the use, but I think, and some of the activities, but I think if Ms. Roberts is going to speak. I'll
Yes,
ask
Kathy is
her.
the program person, I'm the design person.
Okay.
Anything else? Thanks very
I
much.
think so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valerie. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Michael Galante of Frederick B. Clark Associates. Mike?
Good evening, Mike Galante, Frederick Clark Associates. We are located in Fairfield, and I'm also a resident of Fairfield. We prepared a traffic study, and as you know, a traffic study really is a measurement of current traffic conditions, an estimate in this case of future traffic based on this type of use, and a future traffic condition, and what is the impact of that traffic on the roads. That's a typical traffic study. The part of this study that's not typical is the type of use and how we estimate traffic for it. And as you know, we have a handbook that we use for almost every development. This is not a development that I can go to that handbook and say, this will generate this level of traffic. So I'll talk about that in a minute, but just want to run through the process that we went through. The graphics I'm showing are all from the report dated July of this year. This first one is just a reference figure 2. This shows the study areas, an aerial photograph. Barberry Road, here's the facility at the end of the road itself. Mill Hill Terrace, Mill Hill School, Mill Hill Road off to the east side of the site itself. We conducted traffic counts like we do in any traffic study, and I have actually spent a fair amount of time at this school watching traffic conditions in the morning, when staff arrive, for the current use, when staff arrive, when students arrive a little bit later in either a small school bus, if you will, or a parent dropping off, the staff comes out, walks the student in. It's not your typical school. That occurs in the morning, typical morning peak period. In this case, it was 7:45 to 8:45 that we focused on because of the activities at the site itself, Giant Steps. In the afternoon, mid-afternoon, students leave. Again, like a typical school, the buses come in, they do line up, the students are brought out to their specific bus. In many cases, there's 1, 2, maybe 3 students on a bus, and in some cases, there's an aide on the bus. You have parents that may pick up and bring the child home, child or young adult in this case. At the end of the day, towards 5 o'clock, your staff is leaving. So again, we observe that condition. So we have traffic volumes, I call them sample time periods. It's the morning peak related to the school, which overlaps with activities and commuter traffic. The afternoon, 2 to 3 o'clock, which in some respects overlaps with the public schools in the area, Mill Hill, whatever it might be. And then at the end of the day, where this staff leaves, which is typically by 5 o'clock, they're gone. So they're in a way before the typical commuter that we might all be driving home from work on area roads. Reference, and this is just figure 3 just for reference, this is the morning peak. It's a graphic that's a little bit clearer than the aerial photograph, but just simply shows where we counted the traffic. The numbers in brackets are the school buses. And at the end of the site, or at the end of Barberry Road, is the entrance or the gate to the site itself. So if you look at the volumes on the roads, Mill Hill generally has 170 vehicles during a 1-hour period in the morning, being the highest. The commuter, again, is 170 in the afternoon. I'm looking at my numbers. The midday or mid-afternoon is about 125 vehicles, so it drops off. You don't have the commuter traffic in the afternoon. Barberry Road has something in the range of 100 to 120 vehicles, and of that traffic, 45 to 90 vehicles are from Giant Steps.
45 to 90 out of 120?
Vehicles on Barberry Road.
Out of 120?
Out of 120. It fluctuates. In the morning, for example, Barberry has 121 vehicles at this location, so it's capturing the neighborhood, if you will. And at the gate, we had 89 vehicles.
So let's just, 89.
I don't have
out
the
of
percentages, I'm
120.
sorry.
And during that same, I'm sorry, I'm
That's
interrupting
okay.
you, but, so, just in that sample, 120 total, 89 of which are attributable to the site.
To the site today.
Today?
Today.
Right, today.
I'm still on today.
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand.
Okay. In the mid-afternoon, the numbers are much lower. For example, at the intersection, we counted 74 vehicles, and at the gate, if you will, to the site itself was about 55 vehicles. So obviously the numbers go down. At the end of the day, Barberry has about 100 vehicles, and the school, if you will, has 48 vehicles typically leaving. It's the staff leave and go home at the end of the day. We expand this traffic. This is I'll call it a 2014, 2015 traffic condition. I used it 2 years because we did it over a period of time last fall and over the winter and early spring.
These are the 3 days.
3 different time periods, and actually we listed 3, but we were out there several more times just to observe conditions out there. And that was me personally doing that because I want to understand what was happening, what the patterns were.
Were you counting traffic? Were you counting cars at that point?
We were counting cars. Yeah, I counted cars. I counted the number of school buses that would come in and drop off.
Yeah.
I would count the number of school buses that came in at the end of the day and stacked, if you will, to pick up students. So we observed all of that.
Why didn't you put that in your report?
The numbers are basically the same. It's very consistent, if you will. Number of school buses, for example, I think it was 14 to 17 buses. It's the same number. The parents dropping off and picking up, it's the same number. Number of staff, for example, it's the same number. So the observations were really for me to understand if there were different patterns. And I know the school day may change on certain occasions. We tried to capture that in our observations. But as I took that traffic to a future condition, as we always do in traffic studies, when will this be built, occupied, in full use? So I went out to 2017, and I did a couple of things to get to that, what I call a design year. I applied a 1% growth to the area. I added the traffic related to the 18 homes that are currently under construction on Mill Hill to the east, just before you go down the hill. And I put the assisted living development in. If it's approved and built, we put that traffic into the mix. So try, include everything we can. Next step is really to look at and estimate traffic, if you will, for the future use. Part of it's easy, part of it's office space. I go to the handbook for that, and I come up with traffic generation for I use it as general office space, typically 9 to 5, about 4,300 square feet of space, and we estimate about 6 or 7 trips during the typical time periods. And I use the same numbers during the 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just to put some office traffic onto the system, onto the road system. The part that is not from the book, and I have to kind of go through it a little bit, is the next steps, if you will, which is the real purpose of this application. We have as many as maybe 30 students or young adults that we would have at this facility. My understanding is we may not have any more than 15 in the building at any one time. The difference between Giant Steps and this use is Giant Steps is, in a way, a school. Students arrive in the morning, not sure if there's a bell that rings, and the students leave in the afternoon. Staff tend to come in before, staff certainly stays after, and leave closer to 5 o'clock. This particular use is a young adult is coming in for some special assistance, hopefully learn something, and maybe even work with someone upstairs, like someone said before, shredding paper or filing. This is hope to give this person some benefits. So we come up with some estimates of that and who would come and what kind of, in my case, traffic generation. Now, these young adult students do not drive, so they're either dropped off by a parent or an aide of some type, or they're coming in a small school bus. And I say small school buses, they're not 40-passenger buses. They're maybe 5, 6 passenger types of buses. Some of them accommodate wheelchairs, because it's a different type of use. So we've looked at that as far as, again, this is not an activity where everyone comes at 8 o'clock in the morning and stays until 2 o'clock. They may come in for a 9 o'clock or an 11 o'clock or a 2 o'clock activity. They may stay for a period of time for a class, I wouldn't call it a class, but discussion with staff and so on. So the traffic tends to be spread out in this case, which minimizes the generation and minimizes the traffic generation. And again, it's an estimate. I can't go to a textbook for this. As I see it, as I understand it, the staff for this, I'll call the first floor, is arriving earlier in the morning. You may have students and young adults arriving later in the morning, and for the worst case, I put that on top of the students arriving at Giant Steps. I have some of those students, again, leaving at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I have staff leaving over a period of time, and certainly office staff leaving at the end of the day.
Can I ask a question there?
Yeah, sure.
So I'm looking at the chart, table 4, right?
Table 4, yes.
And I see weekday afternoon staff departures, and I see zeros in the middle box. And
This one here?
Yeah, so I was trying to associate your remark about the weekday afternoon staff departure peak hour at the bottom of note 2, and trying to find where staff afternoon departures are represented in the chart.
Okay.
And I didn't understand.
Okay, that's fine. Fair question. It's labeled staff departure because it's the current staff departure for Giant Steps. They're leaving at 4:30, 4:45. So I've labeled it as staff departure as opposed to commuter peak or peak hour, because it's just not your standard.
Right.
I have zeros there because number one, there are no students leaving at that point in time. We're assuming they're already gone from the building. And I'm assuming that staff has already left, or they're leaving after, so I've taken them out of that mix for the moment.
That's fair enough. I'm just trying to find where the staff traffic is represented in this future site generation chart.
I have them focus more in the mid-afternoon, 2 to 3 o'clock time period. Now, I'm not sure if the exact schedule is set, certainly at this point in time, but if you take that, I'll call it mid-afternoon school departure, because it's the Giant Steps school departure time period.
Yeah.
This could also function as the later 5 o'clock time period.
Okay, reasonable
Okay.
enough.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking at the first column, these are the students entering in the weekday morning, 10:10 for a total of 20.
Yes.
And then in the mid-afternoon school departures, those same students...
Same numbers.
Same
It's not the
numbers?
same students, it could be different students, but same pattern, because they're not there all day.
Okay,
There's
same-
some
same
turnover.
pattern.
There's some turnover.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But I looked at those in a similar vein to say, okay, well, if I've got, 10, and 20, total 20 coming in the morning, right, in terms of the students,
Mhm.
those are in the mid-afternoon, where are the staff leaving?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
is that
it-
somewhere in here?
It's not in the 3 time periods that I've analyzed,
Oh.
because it's kind of spread out, because this activity is not really a 9 to 5 operation. For the office, it certainly is.
Yeah, right, I see
It really
that.
is. In this time period, maybe I should have added something in here for the purposes of analyzing and determining impact. But when I get to the analysis step, you'll see that if I added 20 vehicles into this time period, the results are really not going to change. So, I mean, we can
We're
always...
talking about 120 cars on Barberry, another 120 cars, is it 20%? I mean, that's
I wouldn't be adding 120 cars.
No,
If we added 20 cars.
correct.
20 cars, yeah.
And what you're saying is, what I just heard you say is that if I added another 20 for staff in the mix, it wouldn't change the overall result very much.
Correct.
And my reaction initially to that is, how can that be? If the total number that we're talking about now is 120, adding another 20 to that number is a pretty big percentage.
Yes, but an analysis, a capacity analysis is not based on a percent increase in volume. It's based on delay. And my statement from a minute ago was based on the increase in delay.
But...
I understand your question. Fair enough. It's a fair
And-
question.
And, in many ways, as you said, this is not a typical application which would go to the book to be analyzed in a, 0.2 second delay
Right.
versus a 0.3 second delay. We got a
Right.
residential neighborhood here
Yes,
with 120 cars coming through in the morning peak now,
today, yes.
89 of those generated by this site, and to which we're going to add a fairly substantial number of cars. To say that another 20 here or there is immaterial.
Oh, no, I'm not, yeah.
We need to look at the best numbers that we can, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there is some further representation, taking into account staff, I would really like to hear it.
Okay, okay. And I wasn't downplaying anything. I mean,
Yeah,
we,
no, no.
we all I take traffic seriously.
Yeah.
But it's an analysis that I'm providing for you for your understanding and obviously a decision at some point.
Yeah.
What we're proposing is not what is there today, so we're not adding that level of traffic in any combination of, if I was to increase the staff leaving at 5 o'clock, we're not adding 89 cars or whatever it might be to the system.
I wasn't suggesting that. I mean,
Yeah.
the numbers, obviously, the facility is smaller. They're
Much- yeah,
proposing to
much smaller.
cap the students at 30, but clearly there's we've heard there's 17 staff members for which they're providing 17 additional spaces. That means,
Yes.
that's telling me that you got 17 people driving their car to and from the site every day.
Yeah, my only point is that I'm not assuming that all 17 are leaving at the same time. That's my only point. Because it's not a 9 to 5 type of operation.
I interpreted their provision of one space for each one of those people to mean that they're going to be, filling the lot every day, and that,
Yeah.
anyway.
My only point is,
Perhaps
they're not
there'll be some
leaving,
clarification around that.
they're not leaving, they're not arriving at the same time, may not be leaving at the same time.
Yeah.
That's my only point.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Commissioner Barrett?
No, I was gonna say, just clear up on this table 4, Mr. Galante. It says giant steps, next step, but this is just the generation from the next step portion
Yes.
of the project, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
So just what Mr. Chairman Wagner was saying before, these departures, these staff departures in the third column, and there's mid-afternoon departures. So you're kind of saying that if there's 17 staff members, let's say that's a number, and a lot is full, 6 might leave at this peak hour, 6 might leave at this other afternoon, and the other 5 may leave at some time that's not in one of those hours?
That's all I'm saying is that it's spread out over a period of time.
Okay.
If it was a bell ringing for students, or we all work 9 to 5 and we all leave at 5 o'clock or 5 after 5, then I'd have the 17 cars leaving at 5:05. That's my only point.
You feel that it'll be spread out? Okay, I
That's
just
all my
understand
only
the
point.
chart in the data.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay? Table 5 from the report is a mini version of the levels of service and delay and measurements and so on. I'm not sure which page it is after, but it's towards the back of the report.
It's in the back.
It's not in the appendix. You went too far. It's before the yellow page.
It's page 12. 11, follows page 11.
Yeah. That is a summary of the model we put.
Because that, by the way, is illegible.
I can't see it either, so it doesn't.
So is this, by the way, but that's okay.
I know, those days are long gone. I apologize. We're trying to figure out a way of showing it better, to be very honest with you.
Yeah.
And we're working on that. And I said this is more of a simple version of some of the tables that we put together, because there's only one intersection here. But the purpose of this chart, as you know, is just really a comparison of what I call a no-build and a build condition. That's the impact, and that's the additional 20 or 26 cars, wherever it may be, added to the roadway system, and how does the intersection of Barberry and Mill Hill operate before and after? Stop sign control, so delay is the measurement we use. It's not the percent increase in traffic, although obviously the volume goes into the equation. If you look at the columns on the right side, they have the nose and the numbers that is 0.2, 0.1. The nose tell us that there's no change in level of service. We've had this discussion. Levels of service, A is very good, no delay. B is slightly more delay, and as you go down the scale, there's much more delay. I made a statement before that if I added some traffic into that afternoon, I call it departure or staff departure, these results will not change. For example, I'm not going to go into the next level of service because the increase of delay is significant. And I know I used that word first time tonight.
That's fine. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand what you...
But the increase in delay is per vehicle far less than 1 second.
Right.
So all I'm saying is that if I add 20 vehicles to that intersection, it's not going to change that increase in delay where it's a significant impact.
So let me make sure, it's hard for me to read,
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman. So in that last box, projected impacts to build, of no build to build, you're talking about the delays we're talking about here are 0.3 seconds.
Per vehicle.
0.2 seconds.
That's the increase.
That's the increase.
That's the increase.
The increase in delay is 0.3 second, 0.2 seconds, 0.1, and again, 0.3, 0.2, 0.1, and then the last column, 0.1, 0.1, and then finally, on the weekday afternoon, 0.0. Basically the same.
That's the increase.
Right, that's the increase
measured
in delay.
increase, yeah.
And obviously, as Commissioner Barrett has often pointed out, that between A and C, I mean B and C, or C and D, there's a number of seconds often.
10 to 15 seconds.
15 seconds
Yeah.
it can be, and that is, but here we're talking about under half a second.
Under half a second.
Okay.
And that's why, and I mean, we all live in residential neighborhoods pretty
Right.
much. Any vehicle or any increase in vehicles is an impact.
Right.
We know that. I'm not standing here
No.
saying there's no impact. That
And
would be need for traffic study.
No, absolutely.
But in one column, we are saying that. In the lower right-hand corner,
Just about.
um,
You're right.
there is
There's no increase in delay.
Yeah.
there is, and that, which translates in your parlance to no impact. I mean, literally. We're not talking about the difference between insubstantial or what, I mean, literally 0.0 means that there is no impact in that.
Just for reference,
Yeah.
that's the left turn movement from Mill Hill into the neighborhood.
Right.
So keep in
that's
mind,
any
at the end of the day,
Right.
we're not
Nobody's going in.
we're not adding any traffic
They're all going
inbound.
out.
Therefore, it's a
Got it.
zero impact, zero increase in delay.
Understood.
So it
Thanks.
makes,
No,
so it
thank
makes
you for
sense.
that. Yeah.
It
Yep,
makes
yep,
sense.
yep.
But my only point is, this is how we measure impact, and it's a very small impact. Yes, we're adding traffic to the neighborhood, there's no doubt about that. But we want, what is the impact, how much traffic, and of course, at the end of the day, is there mitigation appropriate? And I'm looking at traffic control, it's a stop sign, we're not going to put up a traffic signal. I mean, that's not even an option here. And I just want to touch on one last thing, and then we can talk about any questions you may have. But we also looked at accident data, as we always do. This is from the Fairfield Police for a period of time from, it's a 3-year period, we always have to use 3 years, but 2011 through 2013, a 3-year or 36-month period. And we looked at all of the roads in this area. Barberry, of course, is included. Juniper Lane is also included. Mill Hill Road is included. and there were no reported accidents anywhere in my study area, if you will, during that 3-year period. And that's important. I mean, if there are accidents showing up, then that's something we have to look at as far as, what can we do to change that?
Yeah, it's pretty much a chart of zeros.
Yeah, it's all zeros. Yeah. And I'm not showing this to be sarcastic.
No,
I'm just
she was-
I'm giving you...
She was straining, she was
You can't see it?
straining. There's
Right? I can't see it either. They won't help. But no, part of a traffic study is to talk about accident experience or accident history. In this case, it's from the Fairfield Police Department. We always use a 3-year period. We look at the roads that were impacted that are near the site or in what I call my designated study area. No issues show up, fortunately. If there were issues showing up, we would look at the type of accident, roadway conditions, was it snowing, was it at nighttime? In this case, a nighttime accident is important because it's not when the school's open today, so that would tell me something. But we look at that. But in essence, what this traffic study tells me is, yes, we're adding traffic. We use 26 trips. We may want to add into the later time period to show a worst-case scenario. All I'm saying is this traffic for the next steps, which is really the purpose, which is the application, not giant steps, the impact is very minimal. And it shows up in the chart which talks about increase in delay, and that's how we measure traffic in a traffic study. And I can certainly answer any questions you may have, now or later.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr.
No,
Galante?
it's answered.
No?
No? Okay, thank you.
So, I'm sorry, I did, yeah. Table 1, I just want to go back to the
Table 1.
table, you didn't put it up.
Okay, I'll go to it.
It's,
It's the summary of volumes.
yeah, after your page 6, current bill, current condition.
That's current volumes on area roads, yes.
Yeah. So, I think at one point you said that you took into account the residential development on Mill Hill Terrace, that, the new...
The one that's under
well,
construction.
Under construction there.
Yeah, it's
Sort
not
of-
in these numbers. This is existing.
Right.
Yeah.
So help me then, because I thought I heard you say at some point that you took into account that development and the assisted living facility and 1% growth.
Yes.
How, where? In
Okay.
the future build.
That's
I just
okay.
don't, it's not striking me. I read the report, I've got highlights and notes and
Okay.
things, I didn't...
If you go to the next, just flip to the next page, which is
Yeah.
figure 3,
Yep,
that's existing volumes. That's traffic counts we did in the last few months.
right.
That's
which-
today's traffic. It does not include 18 homes. It does not include assisted living traffic at all.
Okay,
As you go through the charts, and you go to figure, if you start out with figure 6, for example, that's the growth rate of 1% for 2 years. That's general growth.
figure 6.
And you see the footnote there on the bottom left?
Hold on.
An annual growth rate of 1% is employed for the Horizon.
Yeah, and I can tell you that,
What, are you looking at a chart with
yeah,
6 and low
it looks
rate?
like this. It's one of these.
Figure 6.
Okay, hold on.
And it's figure 6, and that's, that,
Projected growth.
Let me get there.
yeah, and I'll take you through the process so you
Yeah.
understand that those figures 6, 7, and 8 simply
Okay.
apply the 1% per year growth of today's volumes.
To each of those 3 time periods,
Each of the time periods,
Right.
each movement
okay?
in the areas, in
Right.
the area, okay? If you go to figure, well, if you go to, now you see table 3, for example,
Right,
that's the 18 homes that's in there.
okay,
Okay, but if you go to figures 9, 10, and 11, and you see the footnote on the bottom left,
I do.
that's where we're adding the traffic for those 2 developments.
Okay,
And you see the volumes on Mill Hill Terrace and Mill Hill Road.
I do.
That traffic is added to Mill Hill Terrace, because obviously those 2 developments are on that road.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So we're adding roughly 80 trips, if you will, 80 cars
right,
during that 1 hour period. So that's the other, I call it other development.
yep. Okay, and then those are the next 3.
And then the next step is we add our, let's assume the 26 vehicles that we talked about is the number we want to use for our site traffic.
Yep,
It's on top of that.
right,
And then the last set of figures would be called build traffic volumes. It includes everything.
And those are taking into account the current counts, plus the 1% growth, plus the 18-home development.
Plus the assisted
Plus
living.
the assisted living facility.
Yes.
And
then.
the
next
proposed
steps.
site.
Yes.
And all of that is tabulated, it goes into the chart we were looking at with your totals for
Yes.
the level of service.
Yes. The no-build chart, or columns, which is in the middle of that table,
Yeah.
is a 2017 no-build traffic condition, which includes the growing of the current volumes, the 1% per year, the 18 homes, and the assisted living.
Right, so.
And that's a no-build condition.
So, right, so.
Okay.
I'm looking at table 6 in the back, not chart number 6, table 6,
Yes.
right after your table 5 of the level of service
Yes.
one.
That's what's called vehicle queuing, which is part of the model. And it just simply says how long a vehicle queue, and that's measured in feet, by the way.
Yeah.
That's the length of the queue at each of the approaches to the intersection.
So, just help me, where is the chart that tabulates the number of cars in adding all of these considerations on top of it?
As far as the just shown volumes,
Yeah.
it would be figures, if you go back to the front of the report, it's figures, it'd be figures 19, 20, and 21. So 19 is the morning, 20 is
Okay.
the mid-afternoon.
And
Okay.
I appreciate that. So that's in the chart. I'm sorry.
We call those figures.
The figures.
Yeah.
Are those totals for volume represented in a chart, columns and labels?
As, like table 1?
Yeah.
No.
Because that would really show me
Mhm.
what the current versus future build volumes on those roads would show.
Yeah,
And I don't have that.
no. But you have, I have all the figures, but no, I don't have that table for you tonight.
Sorry for making you walking through that.
No,
but I
no,
was trying to find it. and
that's
I was
fine.
like, why can't I just
No,
didn't
we
understand
typically
why I
just have an
couldn't
existing
find it.
conditions, and it's usually table 1, that shows the current volumes by all the different locations within the study area.
Okay.
In the future, we can provide that type of table
Yeah,
for
well,
projects.
Certainly I was looking for it because in the past, I've certainly seen you provide charts with compilation of what you anticipate happening in the surrounding areas in terms of, additional volumes. I'm pretty sure.
Not typically that table, no.
No? All right,
No.
well.
No. It shows up in figures, if you will, but we can do that.
Okay.
Not for this project, but we could do it for future projects.
Anyway, I was looking for it.
Okay.
I just want to make sure, so, Mr. Galante, if I'm looking at figure 6, and then I'm looking at figure 19, I'm apples to apples, basically, right? 6 and 19
The
tell me
that's the net-
morning where I was and where I am when I'm all built out.
That would
So
give
I
you the
can
number
look
that the
there.
chairman's looking for.
If I live near Barbary Road, I know that now I'm looking at 4814, 931, and the entry 2669.
Today.
Here I'm looking at 2683 at the entry, 4816, 3912.
Yeah.
When this is complete, plus
Mhm.
what's all going around. But that's from the next steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the best way,
6 and 19.
Mr. Chairman, the best way of thinking about this without the table
Right.
is that, in this case, all of this additional traffic is on one street coming out of the neighborhood. Right? I mean,
Yes.
I know that's what they don't want to hear, but.
No, but it is.
I apologize.
No, that's right.
But
And I
that's-
just have to
but
go
that's
through
the-
and add
that's
up
the
numbers.
comparison.
I can create the chart.
Yeah.
I understand
Yeah.
the data
Yeah.
is here. I can create the chart. I just have to go through and add up the numbers
Yeah.
and put together the different things.
And then if I
And
may.
I can do that.
Just to give you one more step to help you. If I realized you were looking for that, I would have put it in this report. But if you go to figure 15,
Yeah.
it shows you the distribution that we are assuming for this next steps traffic.
Right.
And I can tell you it's based on the current patterns. So we show 90% of this, I'll call it new traffic, coming in from Mill Hill Terrace.
Right. Well, it's both people, driving into the area
Yeah.
from other parts of the,
Yeah, and it's a very
95,
simple
coming off Mill Hill.
assignment, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
No, those percentages make sense.
yeah.
Somebody would have to be traveling from, on Easton Black Rock Turnpike down Bronson or whatever.
They'd
to
be
get to
coming
Mill
through
Hill,
somehow.
Right, which is probably not likely.
Well, it's possible. I mean, if someone lives,
Lives on Juniper.
lives somewhere and they're coming through to this facility, they would be using those back
Yeah,
roads.
no, I meant for folks out of town who are traveling to the site.
right.
The majority of the traffic's coming up from the post road, and turning in.
Or exit 20 on the turnpike, I mean,
Right.
there's possibilities, yes.
Right. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, so,
Okay?
all right. Yeah, that's what I wanted to. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Klein. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Mr. Chairman, I'd now like to address the relevant approval criteria. The applicant did receive a certificate of wetlands conformance from the Town of Fairfield Conservation Department. The drainage report for this proposal, prepared by Rose Tizo, was reviewed by Town of Fairfield Engineering Department, found to be satisfactory. The special exception standards are set forth in Section 27.4 of the zoning regs. Section 27.4.1 states that the location, type, character, and size of use and buildings and structures shall be in harmony with and conform to appropriate and orderly development of the town and neighborhood, and not discourage appropriate development and use of adjacent property or impair its value. I think this section is satisfied since the primary proposed use, the school, is an existing use on the property. School building has existed on this property since approximately 1964. Clearly, the proposed use will not hinder orderly development of the neighborhood since the use has existed originally in the 60s and with giant steps since the year 2000, and I think the neighborhood has flourished. Similarly, there has been no impairment of values, particularly as here where the building proposed to be renovated cannot even be seen, I would submit, by a majority of the neighborhood property owners. 27.4.2 is satisfied because there is adequate protection for adequate access for fire protection. You've heard Mr. Galante's testimony relative to 27.4.3, relative to confirming the fact there's no creation of an undue hazard to traffic or congestion, and adequate off-street parking is provided on site. There's no change in the level of service at the Barbary Mill Hill Road intersection. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Kathy Roberts, the founder and executive director of Giant Steps. Kathy.
Hi, thank you so much for everyone for staying so long and hearing this. This is obviously a very important application from my perspective. I'm the parent of a 31-year-old girl who will hopefully be attending Next Steps, and it's the reason that I started Giant Steps 22 years ago. Many of you probably know someone on the autism spectrum, given the numbers, 1 in 66 right now, but we're going to show a very short video to give you a sense of what the school that exists does, and I hope that will be helpful in explaining what we're...
Yeah, we need to do the lights.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's also warming up.
We are for a difference, for respecting difference, for allowing difference, for encouraging difference, until difference no longer makes a difference. J.B. Cole. American Institute for Neurointegrative Development, better known as AIND, was founded in 1992 by the grandfather of a complex little girl. This amazing grandfather and his daughter set up a small group of parents and professionals to create a place where children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorders and related disabilities could be better understood. AIND set up its first program, which is Giant Steps School, in 1993 to 11 students. Since that time, it has helped hundreds of children and families. Because autism was considered to be a rare disorder then, we were concerned that there would be no ongoing need for our school. The occurrence of ASD is now 1 in 110. Although scientists continue their research to better understand the hows and whys of ASD, the demand for our services continues to grow. There's a saying in the autism community: if you've seen one child with autism, you've seen one child with autism. A walk through our school illustrates why. 2 children with autism can be as different from each other as a child with autism can be from a typical child. Giant Steps has an open door policy. Parents are encouraged to visit often and share what's going well and also difficult experiences, and of course the occasional laugh. Staff meet weekly to brainstorm about students and stay current with the latest research. Our school nurse brings his highly specialized skills to ensure that typical and not so typical medical needs are met. He carefully and creatively assesses children who can't speak. Technology has provided a new way for our students to show us how smart they are. The power of communication in speech and language therapy helps our students. They practice it everywhere and every way they can. Students learn basic life skills to gain independence, self-assurance, and to participate more fully in life. Music therapists develop students' self-expression and auditory perception through movement, rhythm, and music. Our friends in the community provide vocational opportunities for our students to practice skills learned at Giant Steps in new places with new people, preparing for transition into productive adult lives. Children and adults with ASD deserve the same opportunities and options that those of us not on the spectrum take for granted. To be safe, free from abuse and neglect, and to be treated with dignity and respect. Our goal is to build upon the work we have been doing for the past 18 years at Giant Steps and expand our services with Next Step Center. Thank you for all your support. It means the world for Giant Steps children and their families.
So that video was done a few years ago. It was obviously done for fundraising purposes, but I thought it would give you a sense of who we are and what we do. Many of our children graduate from Giant Steps. Some of the kids stay for a year or two and go back to a less restrictive environment in the public school. Some of our kids, we have one young girl, I'm happy to say, who's currently attending college. We have a couple of kids in supported employment placements post-21, and we have one young student who graduated a few years ago is pretty much running a Peapod locally. And the hard thing is this is very unpredictable. No one really understands what these disorders, what causes them, and you really don't know as a parent how your child's going to do. You can have a child who's doing really well, and then all of a sudden at 15 or 16 starts to have seizures and life changes. And we're at Giant Steps, we're not cherry pickers. We take the most complex kids and we help families through this. What we found, now that many of our students have aged out of Giant Steps, is that the current adult programs that exist are not really meeting the needs for all of the students. They do a great job. I'm not criticizing other programs, But we've got some of the more complex kids. I can tell you, my daughter was diagnosed a few years ago with a very rare metabolic disorder, and I was just at a conference last weekend, and she's somebody that probably wouldn't be alive right now, 20 years ago, because we know more now and we know more what to do. So what we're hoping to do is we're hoping to take the things we've learned over the years at Giant Steps and support this smaller group of students who have now moved on post-21 in the adult world. And the way we hope to do that is the school provides a very intensive program. The students get therapies from all these different disciplines that you saw a couple times a week. Everyone has a one-to-one. And as they're older, all of a sudden they fall off this cliff that you heard about at 21, and they still need the kinds of supports that they had. So what we're looking to do is rather than twice a week, we're looking to provide a support that happens maybe once every 2 weeks. So that's how the program will be modified down in terms of staffing. The other thing that's an issue is, what do these young adults do all day long? What does exist sometimes are kind of like fake jobs that people create, and they have people, they create places where people do things that aren't really real work. These students that we're talking about are people that probably can't work a 3 or 4 or 5 hour day, but they might be able to do an hour of volunteer work for one of these small nonprofits that we're talking about bringing into the building. But it's real work. There's a point to it, and it's giving something back to the community in a way that isn't just creating, fake work. I mean, they're adults, and in many ways, they really truly are adults. They get what life is about. It's very complicated to understand, but one of the things that has brought so much insight over the last few years is many of our students are nonverbal. And with the technology that has emerged over the last few years, we've got kids that are using iPads to communicate that no one had any idea they knew what they knew, because they never had a way to communicate it. So we're dealing with kids who science is trying to figure out and catch up with and learn what to do with. And we're hoping to create a place that isn't wasting their time, and giving them a place where they can continue to do the things that are important, support them in a way where we're one of the things that we learned, we have a great staff. You're going to meet some of them here tonight, and they're really good at what they do. But one of the things that, as I said, we've been doing this for 22 years, one of the things that I know makes a difference is the environment we provide for them. Something happens. I know one parent that we had, his son came, he was a boy who was about 12 years old, and to this day he'll tell you that he became toilet trained in a week at Giant Steps. That didn't happen, but what I think did happen is his anxiety just dropped to a point where he was able to accomplish that in a different environment. The public school setting was just too much for him. And public schools place kids with us. They call us up and ask us to take kids that they know need to be in a calmer environment. So one of the things that I will assure everybody is we have a limit at Giant Steps of 40 students. The zoning board gave us a limit of 45, but we've kept it at 40. And the reason we've done that is to maintain that calm, quiet, nurturing, structured environment. We'll do exactly the same thing. We don't want this to be a big, expansive, money-making opportunity. That's not what we're here to do at all. And I'm happy to accept a limit of, we're saying 30. I'm more than happy to accept that. I don't want it to be bigger. Our programming will lose its integrity if it was to be bigger. So we want to keep it small. I think the culture that we've created in the school is one of respect. It's respect for everyone in it. I think people that come and visit, and you're all welcome to come, will pick up on that right away. And it's probably one of the most important things people talk about when they come and walk through the program. And that respect is part of what we do every single day. We have respect for everyone in the program. We have respect for the building, the campus, and the neighborhood. And I understand why the neighbors are here. I get it. I live in a school neighborhood myself. I do understand. In 15 years that we've been here, I've had one neighbor call me that had a problem. And we met with him. He came and talked to the school, to the staff, about someone who he felt was driving too quickly through the neighborhood. He met with our board. We have been very proactive with staff. It's part of our orientation that everyone needs to respect the neighborhood we're in. We put it on our directions when we send out to people that are coming to a meeting at the school, for example, to respect that they're going to be driving through a neighborhood when they come to the school. And we've been very proactive with that. I think I totally understand. 2 weeks ago, one of the board members and I walked around the neighborhood and passed out information about the proposed program. And I did hear a lot of feedback from the staff, from the neighbors, from some of the neighbors when we did that. And so I went back to school because I didn't know that it was a problem. I hadn't heard anything since about, 7 years ago. And I brainstormed with our administration, and we've come up with a plan already that I'm hoping will reduce one of the things I heard, which was when several of the staff leave at once, there's a line of traffic that kind of, goes through the neighborhood that people said was hard. We found a simple way to change that, where it'll be a staggered thing where it's not a parade. I'm happy to work with the neighbors in any way that we can to alleviate that issue.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when you say you heard some things from the neighbors, that was about existing issues, not about the potential project?
I was talking, we were handing out information about the potential project, and people said that they were concerned about the potential project because they were already dealing with traffic from the school.
Because they already had these
right.
things that they were explaining to you. Understood.
But I hadn't heard it, in 15 years, I had only had one neighbor ever actually call us about that. So I'm inviting the neighbors to talk to us, and I did when we walked around. And so the idea of the nonprofits is, I can't name them because I can't really begin to talk to people on a serious level until we know whether or not we're moving forward. But I have talked conceptually to a few people about it, and the types of organizations we're talking about are one group of people that, do a walk once a year, and they have somebody sitting in an office on a phone, and our students could do things like organize materials for the walk, things like that. It's very low impact, low key kinds of things. I mean, we would like, my goal as somebody who's been in this field for 25 years is I would hope that as a small organization, I recognize that it's hard to get space in Fairfield County, and yet we all know that we need these nonprofits to do the work that they do. I'd love to be able to give some of these nonprofits a chance to start off in our building, and then as they grow and move on, having had the experience of working with our young people, that take that with them, because I think fear is such a big part of why people don't engage our students with autism and with these other developmental disorders. And once you get to know them and you recognize that these kids have things that they can give. I'm hoping these organizations will move on as they grow and take that experience with them and be able to then hire people at another level. And that's how the idea came about. I've seen it work. We have a reverse inclusion program with the Umpqua School, and their 8th graders come to Giant Steps and buddy up with our students. They come once a week, and they do it for a year, and they make a commitment. And just this year, we actually hired someone who had been one of those students and came back and is now working for us as a professional staff person. That's about all I have to say. This is obviously very personal. I mentioned my daughter, and she's the reason I'm here. And I also want to take the opportunity to just thank Bill, Phil, and Mike, who learned, they really made a huge effort to understand all of this and understand our kids, and Valerie, of course, as well, because it is complicated. And I really appreciate so much what they've done. So, any questions?
Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
For all the information, really appreciate it. Commissioner Barron?
Yeah, Mr. Roberts, I've been holding my questions till you got here. And it's a long, I'll ask it all together, and if you need me to follow up, I just want to make sure I get it all. So I'm concerned, I'm not concerned, I'm interested in the activities and services you provide.
Okay.
Specifically, when you talk about services like occupational therapy, sensory integration, I'm more interested in the vocational training, community and communication and technology support.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of a place called Paxton Campus in Virginia at all? It's a facility also for adults with autism.
Okay.
I've some familiarity, the people that go there, the parents are very thankful, because if they didn't go there, they would have no place to go to work. But they actually work there. So I'm just interested in some of this vocational training. I never doubt Mr. Fitzpatrick. I doubt that it's just going to be copying and filing. So I'm just asking, will there be any computer work, computer training? Will any of the work be outdoors, like property repair, fence repair?
Yeah,
at this other place, they do gardening.
Yes.
Will there be anything like that?
Well, we have that's the purpose of the greenhouse. The service cafe will be also an opportunity for vocational training for some of our students. Dependent upon who the nonprofit is, we plan to have a centralized office area that will have shredders and copy machines. We were very fortunate that we had a teleconferencing center donated from Cisco a couple of years ago. So we'll be able to set this up in a main communal area that we use, but also the nonprofits will have access to this. So, I did this 25 years ago. I set up a nonprofit, and I know what it was like to buy the first, copier and things like that. It really helps to be able to have that kind of access. And we'll have our students doing, that's what Bill was referring to. They would be working in those areas. So someone could, ask someone to make 50 copies or whatever. Nonprofits still do a lot of paper. We've all tried to go green, but there's still always a lot of paper involved, it seems. And so, preparing for fundraisers and collating and things like that would be the kinds of activities I would anticipate. Certainly, we do a lot, we have plans to have an art center, and, we may, for example, have a nonprofit that decides to do a fundraiser and enlist some of our young adults to create something that they're going to then sell to raise money or something like that. Don't get me started, because this is where I go on and on, but I see it as a place where it's kind of hard to describe, but with the right supports, meaning we have a sensory gym that somebody can go to for an hour, we have a music therapy session that somebody can go to. Some of these young people that can't go and work in another environment could put in an hour or two of productive work. And why not have it be for a non-for-profit? Why have it be fake? That's really the concept. the first time this has ever been done, by the way, as far as I know, too. So the people that I have shared it with, we don't want this to become a huge, as I said before, and I promise you this, we do not want this to become a huge program. We want to keep it small. But the idea that it could be replicated in other old buildings around the country, there's a huge need for that. And I could see that happening. I've already got people that are talking about that. So.
Okay. Do you host any evening events currently at the school, or would you be doing that there, like, just a parent gathering or a social event or something like that?
We do have, our board meets at the school, and it's about once a month. We skip a month now and then, but that happens once a month, and that has...
That's your board, like
yeah.
10 people or
Yep.
something like
Mhm.
that, okay.
Occasionally, we'll have a parent meeting at night if we bring a speaker in.
That was my other question. Do you have workshops for parents? or things like that?
Occasionally. We used to have more of that, but a lot of that's done online now with webinars, and people just, don't do it in too much.
But you do that today with Giant Steps, so this is...
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, and there'd be, and again, were there any plans for the kids to be working on the property at all, like doing any kind of repair work?
Well, we already have gardens, and so I would imagine that we would, hopefully be able to expand some of that. Yeah.
Yeah, just trying to get a sense of what the people will do. And I think
Yeah,
it's a-
yeah, those are the kinds of things that
marvelous
are
idea.
great.
I'm just trying to get an idea what
Yeah.
they'll all be doing.
Yep.
And then lastly, and then I promise that there'll be, is that your letter or statement of intent says there would be, there wouldn't be more than 30 young adults in the building at the same time. Is that what you're looking for, not 30 more at the same time, or not more 30 students in total? I realize this isn't like a school 8 to 2
Right.
as described.
Yeah,
but
no,
that's
I'm
kind of
happy
the
to have
projection.
that limit of 30. I'm happy to have that.
30 total enrollment.
At 30 at a
30 at a
time.
time.
I'm anticipating that it'll be less. The current program that we're looking at right now is, we're looking at,
It
I
says
mean,
8 to 10 in the first year.
we haven't had anybody enroll yet, so, we're looking at putting these out, but the absolute limit would be 30. My anticipation is it's going to be less, and I'm anticipating it's going to be more like 15 or 20
Because when you
at
said...
a time.
You said zoning put a cap on your current school. If zoning did that, it was back in the late 90s that they did that, right? You said you had 45.
Well,
and
I
you
think
had
we
40.
actually even proposed it. I don't think zoning put a cap, but we
Well, when you
just...
say, when you say zoning, it was a while ago. I've been here 12 years, so that
okay.
your approval
Yeah.
predates me.
Yeah, it was
So
1998.
if we were looking at any
maybe?
kind of conditions here, caps, I just wanted to get...
I'm
a feel
happy
for,
to
like,
do
where
that.
was coming
I'm happy to do that. I don't mind a cap at all.
Sorry to jump in.
No, that's
It's
okay.
consistent with how we program, so that's
Thank
not
you.
a problem.
Thank you for your indulgence in letting
Sure.
me speak so much, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, no, of course, but so, my question was around that.
Okay.
That final point, because I was a little confused. I thought I understood it, and then I heard more testimony and you speak, and then I thought I didn't, and then I thought I did. Your statement of intent says never exceed a capped enrollment where there would be no more than 30 in the building at a time. So, if they're coming 2 days a week, you could have an enrollment of 60 or 90 where, you only, where their time in the building is staggered, right, such that there are only 30 in the building. That's very different than having 30 enrolled students, and those students are maybe coming, for 3 or 4 hours a day here and there. And the reason that I say that is because the traffic analysis predicts a max of 30. And the traffic analysis says in Table 4 that on that basis, we predict that the cars will be 10 in the morning and 10 in the mid-afternoon, because that's when they come and that's when they go.
Mhm.
And if the enrollment is really 90, but we're going to put them a third here, a third here, a third here, a third here, and they're going to be coming and going at various times all throughout the day and such, that's a much bigger impact on the traffic expectation.
I-
So,
Yeah,
so it'd be really important for me to understand what the facts are.
well, it gets complicated because of the way the funding works, but what we're looking at right now, the model that we're looking at is 2 sessions, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And the idea would be that it would be a 3-hour session in the morning and a 3-hour session in the afternoon, with 15 max in the morning session and 15 max in the afternoon. Now, potentially, somebody could come sign up for a morning and afternoon session 3 days a week, and,
Then they'd come and they'd stay.
right,
So, right.
right. So we would like the flexibility to be able to do something like that, but it wouldn't mean 90 people would be coming. It would
No, not
be-
90 people coming, but
Okay.
I don't want to overstate
Yeah.
my
Okay.
concern or my question. But even 15 in the morning and 15 in the afternoon is different from 30 at any given time, right? That's actually a less of my perception anyway, is that would be less of an impact than 30 coming in the morning and 30 leaving, because then you get only 50, it's half as much traffic in the morning, half leaving, half coming.
Right.
It just spreads it out. So,
Well, in the adult world, it doesn't work the same way as it does for school-age children, and the problem is, it will be, the way the funding works for families is, and what we would be using with our model is what's called self-directed funding. So the family can potentially, the student could be in, another program 2 days a week, for example, and at this program, 3 days a week. Here's a good way to explain it. My daughter, that's how I can explain this. She's got, as I described, a very rare disorder. I have to bring her to Mass General in Boston twice a week. So she couldn't go 5 days a week. She'd go hopefully 3 days a week. The 2 days that she's not there, potentially another student could attend those days.
okay.
So I wouldn't want to say, I'd like to have the opportunity to have that be the case and not, limit it to 30 enrolled, because say we had 30 enrolled, but Jenny could only go 3 days, that would be number
Well, no,
31.
and I mean, understandably, if you're building the school and you have the resources that are there and they're not being used by one child because they can't
Right.
attend during that day, then your desire, and it's understandable, would be that you would want that spot filled by another student who could come during that day.
Right.
So it would be 30 served?
Well, I'm not sure.
I mean, I'm saying, would that be the appropriate, in a single day of work, it would be 30 served, in other words, that's the
Lights
point.
are killing me.
What?
The lights are
Yes.
absolutely
At a-
killing me.
But you see what I'm saying? In other
Yeah,
words,
yeah.
what their concern is that somehow, without absolute students or individuals being served, that you could somehow have lots more than 30 that would add to traffic. But if
Okay.
the daily service number that you would be doing
That's the
is
way to
30,
say
in other words,
it.
it's 30 slots you would offer.
Yes,
So
yes,
that would,
yes,
those 30
that's the way to
slots
say
would
it, yes,
ensure
yes.
that there could only be those 30 cars that the
Right.
chairman is wondering about, because he doesn't want it to be above that.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you would be accepting of a condition, if we can impose it, where a limit on the number of slots per day served would be acceptable to you. The flexibility would be with your organization to decide who would get those slots.
Yes.
But the point is I couldn't get in my car and just hop on down that day if I didn't have a slot already set.
Yes, yep.
Therefore adding to the
That
traffic.
makes sense, yep,
Okay.
yep.
But you
That's
accept, you
good.
would accept that?
Yeah.
That's what you would accept?
Yep.
Because it wouldn't make sense just to have 30 kids, because they might be here 1 day a week. or
Right,
2 days.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. You might want to refrain from characterizing what I concluded or believed.
So sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do have some questions. I can get you, thanks very much, I appreciate it. Ms. Roberts, I do want to talk a little bit about the nature of the individuals being served. 21 is the, kind of that cliff you talked about.
Yes.
So are we talking 21 to 35? Is there an age cap? Could you talk about, is there a set service age, for example, that we'll be dealing with?
Well,
I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I would, personally, my daughter's 31, I would hate to make it 35.
I don't know, I'm just asking, I'm trying to get a sense,
Yeah.
Because we're calling them kids, but these are going to be adults,
They're adults, yeah. And, I think one of the things as a parent that's difficult is when you go to look at current adult programs, you see a 21-year-old, for example, sitting in a room sometimes with a 65-year-old. We certainly probably wouldn't have that situation going on. I think the way we think about the world that we live in is that we would do what's most appropriate for the young adults and the adults as they age, and maintain the program according to that. I haven't really thought about a cap on the age.
Okay, I just want to get a better sense of that. We're close to the curfew tonight.
Yeah.
But I did also just want to, in terms of how these folks, these young adults would be there.
Yeah.
If they're attending, if they're working in the nonprofit, for example, collating or sorting or doing those kinds of work to help people, the representative from the nonprofit is there. Who else is there with that individual so that they're there and doing their work? And I apologize, these are insensitive questions.
No, not
but
at all.
If I was imagining what I would be nervous about in addition to traffic, it might be, could a young adult, just put down their envelopes and kind of wander out or something like that? And I don't know, and I apologize. But
that's what those parking spots are for.
Okay.
So the staff that would be with them, it's a one-to-one and then a small group for the therapy sessions.
Okay, so there's supervision in all these situations.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've been in existence for 22 years. We've never had a student.
And I apologize for,
No,
I don't want to
they're good
add to
questions.
stigmatizing or anything else. It's just.
You're
All right.
you're asking good questions.
Okay.
They're important questions.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Attorney Fitzpatrick, so
Thank
how
you, Kevin.
quickly can you sum up?
Mr. Chairman, for the reasons I'd outlined, I submit this application as worthy of your approval. Kathy Roberts, the experts, and I will be happy to answer any questions. I anticipate it will not be until 2 weeks from now. Thank you for your time and attention. I do reserve the right to rebut.
Of course,
Thank you.
Of course. Great. That's wonderful. Thank you, Attorney Fitzpatrick. So the applicant's portion of the public hearing is now going to close. We're going to adjourn as a result of the curfew, and we will open when the hearing is continued, which I presume will be the next regular meeting in 2 weeks, and we'll open with public comment. So the meeting is adjourned.